Let's get it going, guys. So what is happening today? We have David Patterson, one of the freaking OG car YouTubers. That dude in blue.
So they say.
Yeah, you've been freaking at it forever, man.
Forever.
Done all forms of driving, driven all forms of cars, everything you can imagine he's been behind the wheel of. And he's got quite a few project cars of his own that are at various stages of who's messing them up this time.
For real, man.
But what has been your kind of favorite era of YouTube? I feel like it's been through so much in the last 10 years. Automotive YouTube. We're not talking about
automotive YouTube.
Because it's been through so much change and so many different levels. And, you know, it used to be when me and Garrett first started, it was like if you had a C7 that was stock.
Yeah.
You were doing well.
You were the guy.
You were cool on YouTube. Now it's like, he's got a Lambo that's twin turbo, meh.
Which is crazy. Like, here's an example. Like, there's a very specific video that I reference, which I think is a turning point in how people perceive horsepower. And it's actually from a really long time ago. It was when Kyle and the guys went to TX2K12. And there's this white Superleggera and a yellow Superleggera. And they dog this like 1600 horsepower Supra. And the way that whoever filmed that clip, like the Superleggera is like brake boosting in a slingshot and it looks like a freaking cartoon because it's so fast. And that's when I felt like the street racing scene too just changed so much because it was like, okay, now you need an R35 or whatever to try and keep up. But man, I'm getting sidetracked, but I would say a really juicy good time was probably like 2015. I really enjoy that era because that's when a bunch of people in our circle really started getting momentum. Mm-hmm. And it was very exciting for everybody. I consider that one of my best career years because there's this very memorable day. I've told it a million times, but I'll nutshell it. Basically, it was the first day I reviewed exotic cars, right? And I had never driven exotic cars my whole life. And so it had this moment where, look, this is a gift to myself. I'm not always going to film exotic cars, but then I got to drive a 918, right? That's when I was like, holy smokes, I'm doing something with my life and people get it and they understand it. And I remember even saying in that video going, this is not normal. Like, this is for me. And thankfully the video did pretty well. But I went right back to my roots of tuner cars and muscle cars and things that people can relate to
normal
more, but
vehicles.
Yeah, but that was like one of those days where I was like, this is special. YouTube is special. You get amazing opportunities. And, you know, TJ was growing a lot at the time. I remember I met TJ at SEMA in 2014 and he was just a kid asking for advice. Right. And now he's huge. And then Adam I met, I think in 2015 too. So it's one of those things where 2015 is like when all these roads met and then everybody diverted. Because if you look at, and I'm not being...
Was that about the time, just for reference, that AdSense started to really pick up?
I don't know. I mean,
13, 14-ish?
I would say, so to give people perspective, I'll make it quick. But back in the day, to be a part of the YouTube Partner Program, you kind of had to apply like a job. There was no just check the box. Yeah. You had to send in a form and be like, hey, I want to try to do this thing and make money on YouTube. And then they would say yes or no. I got denied like 2 or 3 times. And their reasoning was I wasn't uploading enough. And at the time, I think statistically, I remember the statistic in 2011, you had a 1 in 500,000th chance of making it on YouTube as a professional, quote unquote. Yeah. And at the time, there's like a new show like Philip DeFranco, and then there's Ray William Johnson, and like all these different spin-off comedy shows. That's what really, like Smosh, they all dominated. But there was no automotive individuals. Like there was Motor Trend and Drive and Matt Farah, and he was doing great. But there was no like young people driving cool modified cars because Top Gear beat into everybody's head that we don't review modified cars because they break. Like we just don't do that. And I was like, well, maybe I'll be that guy.
Yeah, I'll give this a try.
I'll be that guy. And then I learned real quick why a big production doesn't do that. But lo and behold, I applied over and over and over again. And then I was in the middle of film school in like 2012 2012 and 2013, I realized I didn't want to work on film sets anymore. I was like, this kind of sucks. I just want to make stuff. And then I told my parents I wanted to try to do this YouTube thing full time. Very, very oversimplified. And then I applied. Thankfully, I got the partner program. But in order to really grow, you're making pennies on the dollar. You're making nothing. I basically worked for free for almost 3 years, and I just did like side things. But I lived back home with my parents to make it happen.
Yeah.
It's not like today where somebody could grind for a year and see some results. Back then it was, I hope this works. And maybe it will, maybe it won't.
Yeah, you weren't really looking at like a huge amount of people that were doing it.
And explaining it to people was the worst thing ever. My cheat code was, I'm a videographer for Google. That's what I would say.
Unfortunately, I think it's gotten worse though, because if you tell somebody you're a YouTuber, they're like, oh, my son has a YouTube, like my 10-year-old son also has one.
You must be rich. Like that's another thing too. They just assume that you're a big baller, right? And
it's a tough one. It's a tough thing to explain no matter what.
Yeah. And look, I live a comfortable life, but I don't live a baller life, right? And to explain to that, I think another thing too is 1 million subscribers doesn't mean $1 million. I think that's another thing too. People get convoluted is that subscriber count anymore is more of a flex number. It doesn't really apply to your viewership like it used to because they changed the homepage to recommended. Mm-hmm. So if you tell people this, they go, oh, wow, I don't even check the other tab because it's human instinct just to open it.
The algorithms have become so good that
people assume they're on their sub page. And and plus the bell. I hate the bell so much. It was introduced in 2016. And since my channel, this is a theory, but I'm pretty sure it's right due to some data evidence, but I'm pretty sure my channel in 2016 just went through the ringer because that's when 2015, late 2016, whenever the bell was introduced, my ancient YouTube channel just didn't know what was happening.
Yeah.
Right. And so I had a whole bunch of people saying, how come I can't find your videos anymore? And it's like, did you click the bell? They're like, what's that? Why do I have to subscribe for a third time? Because, hit that, then that.
Do these things, jump through these hoops.
It's proven good for new YouTubers especially. What I've noticed that, I'm not saying becoming a YouTuber is easy anymore, but more people are on the website. And that's a huge difference. Yeah. When I was on it, there wasn't a lot of people on the website. So there's this weird caveat of oversaturation versus no saturation.
Well, it's like the largest search engine in the world.
Yeah.
That's literally what Google has made it. And Google has a good philosophy of they want to make as many people making a living off of YouTube as possible.
Which is wild.
They're not trying to push like 1 or 2 people up to the top. They're trying to make as many people make a living off of it as humanly possible.
Which is a really interesting business model.
I don't know what they consider a living.
Yeah, I agree. To me, it was always... In the beginning, I was like, can I pay rent, food, car payment?
Yeah.
Because Smurf was a car payment, right? And I traded in an 06 3-valve. And for that, I just used that car as the down payment and then did all that. And I was like, okay, well, people seem to like this car, so got to keep it going.
I look at things like gaming channels, and I'm like, man, you have no overhead.
None. They bought their PC. They did it. Well, I think there's a double-edged sword with that because at one point I had 3 different paths of what I wanted to be as a YouTuber. One was like a more of a movie reviewer because I went to film school, like movies.
Yep.
Go to the movie theater, watch it, $7 ticket, and then film your review.
Yeah.
Done. You're in your room. Cheap. 2, believe it or not, I'm like a huge history nut. Like I love history, so I was gonna try to make like a fun history channel because nobody had really done that.
Yep.
And then Crash Course came along, which if you haven't seen it, it's genius and oversimplified. That is the best history channel probably ever made. It's little animations, and he just breaks things down really funny and entertaining. And then the third one was cars, but I felt like I wasn't educated enough at the time to do it. But all of my other channels failed. It wasn't until I did my first car video that it had some traction. Oh no! And LOL.
Oh, there you go. That's a good one.
And I was like, oh my god! But as soon as I had any viewership whatsoever, I leaned into it. Right? I think a lot of people, they don't experiment enough, and they get stuck. They'll be like, how come my channel is not growing? I'm like, well, have you tried other things? They go, well, no. I'm like, what are you passionate about? They go, well, I like jet skis. I'm like, you should do a video on your jet ski. And of course, that's like the thing that blows up.
Yeah.
It's never the video you think is going to blow up. Never. For me, anyway. It's always the ones where I'm like, man, I guess this is cool or whatever. And then, of course, that's the one people love.
Yeah, that's a weird thing. I've always noticed that even when I was with Garrett, we would always talk about that. Like, the one that you spend so much time and energy and trying so hard, you edited it your best you can, and then suddenly it's the one that you filmed 5 minutes hastily as a joke that blows up.
Yep, because
it's painful.
Yeah, because I like
the YouTube algorithm can be cold.
This sounds so like self-centered, but I feel I coined this phrase. It was like, the more passionate you are about a video project, the worse it does. And it's one of those things where I never try to let my hopes get up too much. But nowadays, the game is thumbnails and titles. It's not even the content anymore. And that is really tough. I'll be fully transparent. That's my hardest part. Like, I know I can make competent videos. I know I can edit them well. I know I can do all that. It's getting people in the door. And compared to what I was able to used to do was just like, here's the car. This is what I did. Mm-hmm. I can't do that anymore. It doesn't work. And then I have to put tax all over it and do all this silly stuff. And then all of a sudden you see the numbers go back up and you're like, all right, you got to do this. And I think before we move on, I want to bring up this. I feel as though the day we did the second beater car trip with Ferretti and we were at the firm.
Yep.
And I saw you guys pull up and Garrett walks out with a GoPro and a stick. I felt like that was a huge turning point for YouTube.
Really?
This is my point of view, because to me, at the time, the biggest YouTube channels on, or at least automotive on YouTube, had to have some form of, it's subjective, quality, right? And there was daily vlogging, but there wasn't really that in the auto industry, right? You still had to have some sense of professionalism. Like, I was as loosely associated with that, I think, as possible. But I remember going, I'm doing this shit all wrong. Like, I'm like, oh my God, I'm spending all this time.
I think people were worried about being taken seriously by like OEM.
Yep.
And car journalist was this like cool club.
It's a cool word to say I'm a journalist.
But even the journalists now think that they're still in this cool club of people.
That's 100% accurate.
And I'm like, some of these guys need to relax.
I call myself one sometimes, but I'm in this weird gray area because
you're a YouTuber. You're not you're not the normal journalist type.
Yeah, I would say so, because if I do work with an OEM, I'll say journalist just to make it clear if they don't understand.
Of course.
But when it comes to when people go, so what kind of videos do you make? I'm like, I make cool videos about cars on YouTube. It's very simple. But yeah, I remember when I freaking pit maneuvered Garrett in the Lincoln Town car.
Oh yeah, that was a fun trip.
He got out. Oh, it was so awesome. I want to do one of those again. Yeah. And because those are just great for the memories.
We need you, Ferretti.
I know.
We need your logistics skills.
And, yeah, Ferretti time.
Yeah.
And I'll make it quick. Freaking, he calls me.
It's a podcast. You don't have to make it that quick.
No, but I think it's almost funnier when I make it quick. He calls me out of the blue in 2016 and goes, hey man. Oh yeah, ours was 2017. He calls me in 2016 and goes, hey man, fly to Jacksonville, Florida. Don't even ask a question. I go, okay. And I didn't even think about it. So I fly to Jacksonville, Florida. He shows up in a rolled over, roofed, caved in Isuzu Rodeo with no windows, all busted out. And I throw my luggage through a broken window. I'm like, so what are we doing? He goes, we're buying you a car. And then we just started. And it's funny, that was also a lesson in, just because one channel posts a certain kind of content in the automotive world, it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to do good on yours. So what I noticed with the beater trips, it was much better on Garrett's and Rob's. Yeah. Mine really struggled. I don't know what it was, but a lot of my audience was like, oh, you're abusing a car that somebody could have had. But I'm like, you weren't going to buy it.
Yeah.
That car, I remember the Lincoln Town Car ad said posted like 2 years ago. Mm-hmm. It's like, you're not buying this thing.
Yeah, that vehicle was bad. We like dragged it out.
It drove in Daytona Beach's water, and it just kept going. That was the lone survivor. Excuse me.
Yeah, that was a bad. I wonder now if with the different algorithm though, would it do better because the algorithm would have brought the people that watched Ferretti's and Garrett's to your channel, whereas before it wasn't smart enough to do that.
That's a really good way to put it, because I remember, this is also another turning point. I remember Garrett texting me. He was like, hey man, I see that your videos are struggling with this. Can I make you a thumbnail or title? I said, sure. And all of them tanked even worse. And he's like, I just don't understand. I'm like, I'm telling you, I don't understand.
Yeah.
Like, if people think I'm an expert at thumbnail title, I'm not. That's why you see YouTubers nowadays change them sometimes, because you have nothing to really lose anymore. Back in the day, your thumbnail title was the law. Like, you do not change it. But now the algorithm can handle it if you just do subtle changes to it. As long as it's like the same topic, it's fine.
Me and my wife even go back and forth. I'll post one and I'm like, this is the title. And she'll be like, if it's not 5 out of 10, change it to mine and we'll see if it does better. And we'll like kind of go back and forth like that sometimes.
It's kind of fun. 6 or 5. Okay. Do they know the ranking system thing?
I don't know.
It's the worst psychological thing YouTube has ever done.
Yeah. They tell you how your video stacks up to the last 10 you posted.
Yeah. So you suck.
You're always trying to get number 1.
Yeah. If I hit 2 or 3, I'm satisfied.
I usually know where it's going to land.
See, I have no idea.
I usually have a pretty good idea.
Every time I hit upload, I have no idea what's going to happen. And that's been a real mental struggle for me, because like it got to this weird certain point right when they added the ranking system. And to make it clear for people who have never seen it, they also put a very passive aggressive phrase along with the ranking.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah, people ain't watching your stuff. It sucks, dog. Don't do this again. And that's not exactly what it sounds like, but if that's how you feel. And there's a certain time in my career that like I was scared to hit upload or go public. Like I was like, I love the video that I made, but I'm scared of how it's going to do. And people might find that weird, but I think the roughest thing about my stuff has always been my channel. And this is not me complaining. It's just how it is. My channel is very inconsistent, because I experiment a lot with content, right? I'll experiment with different cars. I'll experiment with different events. And that's how I kind of throw darts at a board and be like, what do people like? What do
people don't know what they're going to get.
They have no idea. And the thing is sometimes it's a bad thing. And they go, well, that doesn't really look like a video David would make. So they don't really see it, or they're just not interested. And thankfully, I have to say, I have one of the nicest audiences on YouTube. They will be very, very constructive with me. And I remember I created this rule for myself, is like, read the comments like the first 30 minutes to an hour, because you're going to get 2 things. You're going to get people who are really supportive. 2, which could be an echo chamber, and that's dangerous. 2, constructive criticism. Somebody goes, I wasn't really feeling this. Try this next time. You're not going to get this sucks,
Yeah.
And because right after that first hour, that's when that starts showing up, like people who don't know you. And to me, that doesn't add value. Now, I know some people might be like, wait, you don't read all the comments? I'm like, no, because that's just too much time wasted to move on to the next video.
Yep. I read a lot of mine, and I think I get a very harsh audience because I'm also doing something competitive.
Yeah.
So I can suck at what I'm doing very easily. I often do. And I'm very hard on myself. And I think people, like I'm usually the butt of my own jokes. So
I'm super competitive, so I understand.
People like they get in on it. Like when I'm the butt of my own joke, so now I'm the butt of everybody's joke, which I'm okay with. I have thick enough skin. I've been doing this long enough.
At least you know that, right?
I've been doing this long enough. You're not going to scare me or like be mean to me enough where I'm going to go crawl under my bed and hide.
No, that's another thing that people should know is those first few times like you get assaulted, like basically it's going to feel weird because you're going to be like, should I be mad?
Yeah.
Should I not? And, if we bring it back to like 2011, when I was sharing stuff on forums, dude, roasted. I got called.
Very faceless.
There's like 4 different insults that I literally cannot say on this podcast that I was called.
Really?
Yeah, like it was so bad. Like,
so you would just like film your videos and then you would try to put them on the forum that connected to them.
I was at the time
like
there's
grassroots marketing strategy.
There was no true way to share your videos. Like Facebook would bury it because it was a YouTube link, so there's no point. But Reddit. There was another one. Dig. Yeah, Dig was around.
Yeah.
I shared on Dig. I shared on forums, especially like local forums. Oh man, that was a mistake. Because it would just be people wailing on me for like 3 hours. I'm like, okay, never again.
Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the forum is just it's kind of a dying art, unfortunately. So
It's definitely cooked. I mean, unfortunately, though, Facebook doesn't do good enough with searching. So if you're looking for an answer on your car, you can Google it and a forum would be found.
Yep.
But now you have to like find the group and somehow search it and then read through comments
or join
of people
the group,
attacking each other.
Yeah.
It's a tough deal to try to find answers now unless they were answered a while ago on a forum. The forums, they were pretty good. Zuck kind of ruined the forum.
Yeah, I mean the forums though. I made like a silly joke on my. I did a video in I think it was October. It's just so funny. So what I do is like my process because a lot of people don't realize like I do everything right. I film it, I edit it, I write it if I need to write it. I usually do it off the cuff, but for this one I wrote it. It was the car culture documentary I did in October, and I did a comparison between the year 2012 and 2022, and I was super proud of it. Got 1 million views, so thank you, everybody. But what was really fascinating was people in the comments going, what's a forum? Like, there was a few people going, what is it? And I had a joke in that video where I said, when you'd go on the forum, ask a question, oh, stupid, it's already in this thread, you should have gone here, and then you just get roasted for 5 minutes before finally finding the answer.
And somebody could have answered by now.
Yeah, instead of like, oh yeah, man, this gets asked all the time. Here it is.
I wonder if people would be less combative now because there's so many other places to attack each other.
I know.
You can go on Twitter and attack each other all day.
Yeah.
Maybe the forums would be less bloody.
Yeah.
Maybe they would
Maybe.
Because that was where you used to have to go to get your anger out.
Or 4chan.
Yeah, blow out your anger on a forum instead of like Facebook or Instagram or Twitter's a fun one.
Dude, like 4chan was wild. I mean, it is still wild. And I used it as a kid. And it was bananas.
I never spent too much time on there. Sometimes I'll get like a link for like a conspiracy or something that's always fun.
Oh yeah, no, it was a really easy place to like go down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
But what I really admired about that freaking weird community, because that weird hacking group Anonymous came out of there, right? And all that stuff did. But the main thing was, I don't know if you heard about the whole this is just an example. The whole Shia LaBeouf thing with the flag. Did you ever hear about this? So,
should I put my conspiracy hat on?
Oh, go ahead. Do it.
Okay. Just in case.
So, all right.
I mean, if you're talking about 4chan.
I want to be very clear. This
hat.
is not a political argument, but there was politics involved. Okay.
Got a tinfoil hat on.
Here we go. So Shia LaBeouf, the actor, didn't like that Trump got elected. So he goes, I'm going to do this art piece where I put up a flag that says he will not divide us. It won't divide the people.
Yeah.
And he put it on a webcam and he live streamed it for 4 years. Like that was the plan. Where he put it in the middle of nowhere and 4chan got together and geolocated it and took it down, and they put a MAGA hat in its place. But the way they did it was they used trigonometry.
Just the internet doing internet
they
things.
used trigonometry. They used the constellations. They did all this tracking, and it just shows like they should be doing something else. You know, it's one of those things where there's so many smart people out there that would just waste their time.
Have you ever seen that guy that does the geo mapping stuff?
Yeah, in like,
he can find
3 seconds.
Instantly.
Dude, it's so fascinating.
That guy is a legend at that. I tried playing it a little bit. I was not terrible, but man, that guy is freaking on it.
And he admits it a lot of the time. He's like, these are just kind of educated guesses. Like, and he gets it almost everything. He's like, yeah, they paint the lines this way.
Yeah,
they do the
that
lamppost this way.
Only grows in this country. I'm like, all right, relax, dude.
But imagine like that's your hobby, So if you see it like us, like where we dump all our time into that, that's his game. That's his video game. And I guess it's somewhat useful if you traveled or got kidnapped.
Yeah,
I know where I am.
The police need to hire him or something, FBI. I can take off my conspiracy.
We're all good now. We're all good now.
Yeah, we got the guy. He knows where everything is. So the car community has obviously changed a lot. It's It's in a weird spot right now where horsepower is so easy.
It's so easy.
And it's almost unfairly easy because if you have a 1997 Camaro with an LS1,
oh yeah,
you're just like, that car was really great and powerful until like 2010.
Yeah.
And now it's just, your VMP car.
Yeah, it's stupid. I drove it 9 hours here. It
2-day build.
Yeah, 93 octane,
And even that's like a relatively old build now. They make more power on their new blowers and stuff.
Yeah, that's an Odin blower. It's the new one.
Oh, is it the new one?
It literally is so efficient that sometimes your IETs go down. It's so stupid. And literally, I was at National Speed in Richmond. They had the VMP kit. Mm-hmm. It's warranted. I had a warranty on this. They put it on there. And what's funny is I was there for 3 days, but we installed 2 kits just to demonstrate.
Yeah.
We did 2 supercharger kits essentially in 3 days. And if it was just us doing the main one that I put on, it would have been like 12 hours, right? It wouldn't have been like this thing. But yeah, it's amazing. Like, I have no fears in that thing. I just drive it everywhere. And it's weird that at any moment, 99.9% of the people you run into on the road, you're going to just dog them.
Yeah.
Right. And, oh, my friends, I know. I get it.
But it drives like factory.
Yeah, with a 10-speed auto in it. It's crazy. And then I go back to the JDM stuff, and I'm like, this is so much work. It's a lot different of a culture.
Even for drifting now, I think RTR is showing that you don't need a clapped out 240 to go have fun.
Just literally, like, T-Pain did it right, man. He got just a stock Coyote, did the wide body kit on it from RTR, or he did the whole kit from RTR, put the Fun Haver angle kit on it, and bada bing, bada boom, drift car. Fuel, tires. So I think what a lot of people are starting to realize is, do you want to spend your money on the barrier to entry and just relax? Or do you want to just be that guy who maintains the car, right? And just keeps fixing it. And I think especially with drifting, a lot of people have this oversight of like, it's great to get a missile car. It's awesome because it's good to learn in, get like E36 or whatever.
Like a Z.
Or a Z.
Get the Z.
The Z. Yeah, I have the most seat time in a Z out of any drift car. But dude, yeah, a Z. Here's an example. They're way too expensive right now. Just letting you know. But e-brake, like a seat, maybe. A steering wheel, maybe. An angle. And you can go drifting really well, and you're good pretty much forever.
Yeah.
You just wheels, tires, and gas. But then don't be like me. I've been building a drift car for like 7 years, and I overbuilt it because I thought it'd be cool. Yeah. See, I could have just been driving a Z.
Well, even like with the T-Pain thing, like I have no issue with the built not bought thing.
I never had that issue.
I hate that because I don't like gatekeeping the sport
dumb.
At all.
So dumb.
We need more people in it.
Yeah, to keep it alive.
We don't need somebody with their clapped out, 240 to be gatekeeping drifting. Not that I care about drifting at all, but it brings people into the sport of cars.
And drifting is more accessible than ever right now. Like at Lanier, which is like my main home track, it's like $90 to go all day. Yeah. Which if somebody's like, well, that's too expensive. I'm like, not 10 years ago. 10 years ago to do like one drift event was like almost $300, at some places.
Yeah.
But it's just so cool that like Lanier and Caffeine Octane, it's every other Friday. And they have a different layout, and you can try new things. You can drift banks. Drifting banks as a rookie is super intimidating.
I'm sure.
Especially in a low power car because you have to haul ass to get it around. But
banks
it's good.
Backwards to
it's
what
healthy.
You think.
Big time.
They're completely counterintuitive. To get away from the wall is not how you think you would.
No.
Very different.
You have to commit, and if you don't, you're going to get sucked in, right? And I thought it was funny as a side note, like Daniel Ricciardo from Formula One. They're like, hey mate, you go do IndyCar, and he's like, no, that's scary. Ovals are scary. It's funny to see like an F1 driver be like, that is scary. Which, have you ever driven like a NASCAR? Like a Richard Petty experience or something like that? Not
anything but the Dale truck when we had that.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah,
I've ripped that thing a little bit.
When I was 18, my dad, it was like his dream to drive like a stock car. He'd never done it. And my dad's not like a huge car guy, but he appreciated it. And we were in Daytona for spring break. So we went to Daytona, and they said, "Hey, are you 18, drive stick, and have a driver's license?" I said, "Yep." They go, "Okay." They just let you drive this, and it's great. It was my first ever lead follow exercise.
Yeah.
The faster you go, the more they go, and I did like 170 something, and yeah, on the oval of Daytona. And when you're there, I think the weirdest thing, like you were saying, is just you need to hug the wall, right, to really have a good line.
Yep.
And every ounce of you as a rookie is like, don't go near the wall. But
Yeah, it's scary getting close to that wall. And the perception of the car is all different.
yes, and also I think what was kind of beneficial was the one I drove. This is like years ago. This is like 2009 probably. There's no speedo in the car. And that actually took some fear away. Not knowing how fast you're going, you just focused, right? You're focused. It was a 4-speed. Once you got into that fourth gear, you're good to go. You're just driving normal. And I would like to do that again, like one of the more modern cars, and see what the difference is, because they went to sequential gearboxes and IRS, and like it's just so interesting how that sport is like trying to get back to the youth, and it's tough.
Every time they change anything in NASCAR, the people hate it.
Car of Tomorrow
They added
was
the wing,
awful.
and people hated that. They were like, it has a wing on it.
It was 2007 when they transferred to that. And the cars weren't that great either. They were just not.
Now they tried to make them look like the street cars again.
I wish they just did street cars, basically.
Yeah.
Like almost like an IMSA race. It would be cool. Like how Petit Le Mans does it with those kind of classes around an oval. That'd be sick.
It would be. They could definitely do something like that. But like, Toyota has a Camry in there, and you're like, huh.
I'm sure that has a V6 in it.
That front wheel drive.
Also, I was hoping they would do more Rovals, right? And because that just makes it so much more interesting. And with the Roval we did, remember at Daytona for the Project Car Challenge, like it was in the rain, and my S chassis was terrifying.
We pulled the parachute in Leroy.
That's right.
Around Daytona.
That was one of those days that I was like, I just drove on Daytona in my car. That was cool.
Yeah.
That was a cool day.
See, that's what I'm saying. We need you, Rob. You're good at logistics.
He's really good at he owns a travel company.
Yeah, he's the logistics
I
guy.
do adventure drives with him every year. It's amazing.
I haven't talked to Rob in forever, but I would hope that
you want to talk about
get him on the podcast.
I'll Die on the Hill. He's the original car YouTuber that was successful. Because he sold
the original. It wasn't like a journalist.
Yes, I think there's a very clear description. I put Rob into an individual, like a person posting automotive content and selling DVDs. Like that's what he was
like
doing.
His face in it.
Yes,
too, because some people were like, even Shmee, I think, started without him in it.
Yeah, and then he realized it was beneficial to be like, whoop, and then that was it.
Kyle Loftus is an original. Like, I like to give those people their flowers that they deserve.
I didn't know, exactly. So I just did. Sorry, I did self-plugging. I just did another car culture redux kind of video about how YouTube has affected the car industry.
Yeah.
And I bring up Rob, I bring up Kyle, I bring up Dom, I bring up all these really OG guys and how they affected it. And yeah, Kyle did basically the same thing, but you didn't know Kyle. You didn't know what he looked like. I didn't know what Kyle looked like till years later, right? And then, because you'd always hear, so what kind of power does that go for? Yep. That's who Kyle was. And then when I got to meet him, I love those guys.
Even now, he's not in a ton of the videos. Like, you could watch 20 videos that they just came out with, and you're not going to be like, oh, so this is a vlogger. Yeah.
No, I mean, they were, those guys. You know what's funny? I met Garrett before Kyle. Mm-hmm. So I was at SEMA 2014, and I was walking around, and Garrett looked tired. I mean, it was SEMA, and he was holding the camera. He was in his little 1320 Polo. Like, I had just done the Jasmine review, which is kind of like the video that changed my life. It was this crazy Evo that I drove, and it got shared around the world. And finally, I could like go full time.
Was it at SEMA, or was it?
No. Just in general. Like, it just came out, but in that video, I'm wearing a 1320 video hat. So he was like, oh yeah. And I came up to Garrett, and I was like, hey man, big fan of 1320 videos work. He's like, we try. I'm like, okay. And it's funny how I was fanboying in a way, and I didn't really realize like how the relationships all were.
Well, this is what I was just telling you about, how it's hard to introduce yourself to somebody, and then if they don't realize who you are, then you are just a fan encounter at that point.
Guy.
And I hate to be like, how do you get anything but a fan encounter with somebody if they don't realize that you're kind of on the same level as them?
Yeah, and at the time I was
like
still
a douche.
No. I know exactly what you mean, and basically I remember I just gave him a little nudge. I was like, yeah, I did this Black Eva video. I was wearing your merch. He was like, oh, and that's what like really kind of clicked it all together. And then he's like, yeah, Kyle's not here right now. And I couldn't find him. I was like, damn. But I ended up really hanging out with those guys in 2015, and I would say, like, I love working with all the YouTubers, but hanging out with those guys just feels like a family. You know, they're super laid back, super easy to talk to. Matt is such a trip. Matt is like my long lost brother. Like, it was one at Ice Cream Cruise, we switched hats one time, and I was wearing a mask at Ice Cream Cruise because I was super paranoid because I had this really important gig the next week, right? And I wasn't a huge, I had to wear this, but I was just like, just in case, whatever. And they were nice enough to give me this nice one. So me and Matt had the idea of like, let's like switch, and people would call me Matt all day long. Like, hey, Matt, I'd be like, how's it going?
Yeah, you guys are definitely like the same height and build.
We walk the same way. We both have a little like waddle going on. Matt's a G, dude. I love that guy.
Yeah, I was actually just talking to him yesterday because he's in town.
Oh, right.
Him, Fred, and Woody are in town right now.
Oh, man, I gotta go see hi.
I know. Yeah, we gotta head out there after this. Yeah, that's a funny deal because even like Garrett was probably 19.
Oh, he's super young.
When you're talking to him.
Yeah.
At SEMA that time in Vegas.
Yeah. What's he gonna do in Vegas at the time?
Because when we first were working with 1320, we were both still in college and stuff. We were young.
Yeah.
I didn't know cars well enough to have the position I did, but I was lucky enough to be trusted because I knew social media enough, but I didn't know cars enough. And Instagram was still even like this thing was
baby. Yeah.
And now
it's food.
Sucks.
It was just like, let's take a picture of my food. Yeah.
And now it went like it was good for a little while. Now it's back to being terrible. I hate Instagram.
With the whole reel stuff
It's
and
just
like
bad.
how you have to post basically video now because it's trying to keep up with TikTok and all of that.
It's a bad deal.
You know what I've noticed? Friends of mine who are TikTokers are trying to get into long form YouTube, and long form YouTubers are trying to get into TikTok. It's like this weird relationship of like, how do you keep people's attention for 10 plus minutes? I'm like, well, I just do it. And they're like, I'm like, well, how do you talk so fast and be like very clear? Especially a lot of like girl TikTokers I know in the auto industry, like Christina Roque, she's awesome. Life of Annie, she's super awesome. But like when they do their parts and stuff, they're like, so then I did this, and then I did this, and then I'm like, man, that's so much information. Like, it's like wordsmithing, as fast as you can.
See, the short form is tough because we get so much data on YouTube that you could get so lost in it.
So almost too much.
So much data. You see like a little bump in views. You're like, what was that? Like the bump in like the watch time and stuff.
It's easy
like,
to get buried.
You could get so buried. And it's
overanalyze
fun,
it.
But then sometimes I sit back and I'm like, I just went too deep. I need to just think about what I want to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Instead of what I think will do better.
Here's an example. So before they held the whole ranking system and all that, I remember if I had a video that flopped, it did not hit like it does now, right?
Yeah.
It just, because you would not, YouTube Studio, like your app on your phone, before the days that existed, you would have to wait like 2 or 3 days, right, to see how your video was doing.
Yeah.
So you would just see and go, all right, on to the next one. And now you're just like overanalyzing it because you're like,
I know.
Refresh.
Heard of people that are like, I don't even keep YouTube Studio on my phone anymore. I'm like, you're so much better than me.
Oh, I know. It is a weird mental game because you're going to want to change stuff fast. You're going to want to do stuff fast. In reality, I've noticed that my videos most of the time are actually like slow burns. Like, it might feel like it really bombs, and then 2 days later, it's where it should, like, quote unquote, should be. Yeah. I'm like, wait, what?
That's how the podcast stuff is. It's just like, it kind of just slowly grows, because you can come back and listen to this in a year, and it's still going to be fairly relevant.
It's not time oriented. That's actually what
vlogging is so bad about that.
Dude, you're out of the loop.
One day,
you're done.
But even if I film something and I'm like, if it takes me more than a day to post it, I'm like, I'm not happy with this. And that's where it's tough with doing ad reads. because I'm like,
getting the timing right, submitting it for review.
It's so outdated at that point. The whole video is outdated, it feels like.
So I think that's a good thing you brought that up, because I've always tried to make sure that 90% of my content is evergreen and relevant all the time.
Yeah.
That way, because I did vlogging for a while. In my very early stage of YouTube, I almost daily vlogged, and I was exhausted. 1, 2, they just didn't really get the viewership that my other content was doing. And I have this weird hindsight moment of, if I had just kept doing that, it probably would have benefited me. But at that current time in the YouTube realm, you kind of just had to lean into what was working. And so I kind of pushed the vlogging aside and just went for the straight car features.
Do you not think of like 2 channels though?
I did at the time, but I just couldn't keep up with it. You know,
that
just
would
like
be
right
cool.
now, I have a second one and I haven't uploaded in like a year, and it's just so tough because I would have to hire an editor at that point. And it's so funny too. With everybody's different editing styles, like some people can finish their video in like 30 minutes. It takes me hours.
I can do a video in 10. I can edit a video in 10 minutes. But that's also because I know what I just filmed. I don't stutter a bunch. I talk fluently.
One take wonders help too.
I can do one take and I know what I just filmed.
Yeah. And
it's film, and I film it that day. I post it.
It's top of mind.
Yeah, like it's completely fresh on my mind. Sometimes like with the podcast stuff, it's 2 hours of talking. I'll forget.
I'm usually running multiple cameras. I'm going through GoPro footage or 360 footage, and then you have to edit the 360 footage, and then people have no idea. And it's so funny how it's like the one comment that sometimes gets to me is like, your stuff's low quality. I'm like, you shut your mouth. Like, I know it's not Haggerty quality, but as a one-man show, I feel pretty proud of it. And so it's like the one thing that gets me. Well, then you look at people
like DeMiro, and you're like, I think he was using like an Android for a long time.
with his microphone across the car. I'm like,
what
am I doing?
I know. And his are evergreen as can be.
Oh yeah.
Those are always relevant.
He nailed it, dude. I mean, like some people just have that lightning in the bottle idea, and I think it was one of those things he realized too, that he didn't need to make his stuff nicer. He was just like, I'm just going to keep it this way.
Yeah.
I think his audio got a little bit better, but that's a lav mic away. It's done.
That's why even on this, I'm trying to refrain from I don't need 4 camera angles.
No.
Like I know a lot of people do that, but I don't know if that adds to the content.
Yeah. I
hope people are listening to this. If you're sitting there watching this, put some headphones in, go do something, go mow your lawn. Go work on your car, put your headphones in. That's what I'm hoping to get out of these. Or somebody's like working.
Or you're on
driving.
a 9-hour road trip that I just did.
Yeah. You're on a 9-hour road trip. Things like that is what I hope this goes to.
I think this is just going back to like the work ethic of YouTube, right? I think what really keeps me going anyway is when I go to a shoot and I see how excited people are. Mm-hmm. They're just so happy to be there. And I'm like, I'm just doing my job. Basically, to me, it's just doing my job. And they're like, oh my God, like, I'm so happy to be here. This is so much fun. And what I typically do now is I'll try to film in the mountains, right? And what I used to do is just meet people in random parking lots and do one car at a time. And it was just not practical. So now what I do is I try to find a really pretty spot somewhere in the Appalachian Mountains, be like, hey, who wants to come to the mountains this weekend? Because then it turns into like a thing. They get to come.
It's almost like a meet.
Right. So like if they're driving from out of state, which happens a lot, people don't realize, I think the record right now is Niagara Falls. Somebody came from there. Chicago. But people come from all over. And then next thing you know, you have 6, 7 cars that day. And everybody's just kind of waiting for their turn.
They're hanging out.
And they're just hanging out. And we're on this beautiful overlook. And everybody's got fold-out chairs and snacks and just hanging out. And it just turned more into an organic feeling. And it makes it even more satisfying when people see their own car get driven. Like, that's a weird feeling.
Yeah.
If you've never seen your car in the third-person perspective, you're like, oh, so that's what it sounds like, or whatever.
Do they ever ride with you?
So, okay, I give people 3 options. This is typically what I do, because I want people to feel as comfortable as possible.
Yeah.
If you are not game for coming and me driving your car, do not come. That's okay. There's been 2 instances, just for reference, that you could tell they were not all the way about it. They felt uncomfortable. they just kind of said yes because they were scared to say no. And I was like, I could just be like,
Yeah, like,
I'm
just
sorry.
say no, it's
Yeah,
okay.
just say no, it's fine. But what I do is I give people 3 options. I say, 1, I do the video by myself and you can ride with me just for your peace of mind, to see how I drive your car, see how everything's going, see the process of me talking to a rock for a living,
Yeah.
you know, and you can just be there. 2, you be in the video, almost like a review podcast session, almost.
Yep.
Like point the camera towards both, because I use this 3-prong suction cup with my DSLR, and I just aim it at both of us.
I was in the car with you once.
That's
with
right.
It.
That's
Yeah.
right. So
Couldn't believe it.
So I did that, and then the third is you see your car from the outside, and it's not that I encourage people to see their car from the outside. I just go, listen, it is a weird experience, and you were nice enough to bring me the car, and you trust me with the car. So just give it a whirl. If not, ride with me. It's all good. Because I remember the first time I did a car review with somebody in the car, but they weren't in it. And I was like, okay, this is a weird social moment. Like, how do I do this with them here? And now I just do it in my sleep. It's just time and practice.
How much research do you have to do for a car? Do you just get the quick 10-minute
So
run by of the
sorry to interrupt you.
car from them? You're good.
So yeah, my brain's just like, well, I actually said on one of the other podcasts, I'm like, God, I get so excited to be like, well.
Hey, they get to hear from me all the time.
So typically what I do is I do homework. So if I don't know anything about the car previously, I'll get a brief history of it. I'll go, okay, this is why this car company built this car. This is who it competed against. Blah, 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 blah. And then usually it's crazy modified. And be like, well, this is not that car, and then I break it down. And then I usually get some sort of parts list. And then I'll take the parts list and then Spark Notes it. So basically I'll take this parts list that's this long and I'll break it down to this long. Because at the end of the day, what I've learned over the years is that car people watch my channel. They get it, right? And so I don't have to be like, these are the valve springs. These are the rods. These are whatever. Unless it's like a crazy built setup where I'm like, this has Carrillo rods or Manley rods. This has this. I rarely do that anymore because there are people who appreciate the detail. But overall, I'll be like, what's the most efficient way for me to say it's a built motor? Let's move on. And because the main reason people are there to see it drive. And so I'm like, how do I get to that part? How do I stay entertaining at the beginning where I give the history? Typically, if people have never watched my stuff, it goes like this. I usually do an intro, whether it's pretty, like glamorous, or it's a voiceover. And then it's the intro. The intro's over. And then it's me driving. I'm usually driving the car. And then I just get it done. I go, here's the car. This is what it's all about. This is why it's cool or whatever. This is the history of it. Here's some of the parts that make it great. Bada bing, bada boom. Let's drive. And then I get it done. And so that's why I have this weird thing. My watch time is usually pretty consistent. And it's usually because people aren't patient enough to wait for the driving part, but they don't realize that the rest of the video is driving. So it's this weird yin and yang. Because you'll get one side of the audience who goes, I just want to hear you keep talking. I just want to hear you keep talking about the car. The other side is, I want to see more pulls, or I want to see more driving.
Yep.
And so
have you thought about just like taking the first 10 minutes and doing your normal thing and then like adding at the end, like in the weeds?
That's basically what I do.
Yeah,
so nowadays what I do is I take, what I do now is when I edit, this is kind of my thought process, is that I'll talk some, do my first pull, talk some, do my more aggressive pull. Because when I'm driving these cars, people don't realize sometimes I'm only driving these cars like 40 minutes. I have to learn this. I have to, like sequential gearboxes, like stuff like that. You have to really nail down in a very short amount of time. So that's why sometimes I'll put little subtext going, this is me learning this. This is me in this pull. I'm ramping into this power more.
Yeah, it's not like you've driven these every day.
And then
like
usually by the end, that last pull is when I got it. Like, here's the mother of all pulls, right? Or I show a really gnarly corner or a donut or a drifting or whatever we're doing. So I try to save the best for last in a way, because what I've noticed is if I just give it off the rip, people don't stay. They go, okay, I heard it. I know what it sounds like. I don't need to stay.
So you kind of just lose the viewers right off the kick.
Right. That is according to my analytics. I'm not making an assumption.
You have the statistics. People can't be like, no.
Most replayed. Oh, they left right there. Got it. You know.
So how much worse is it working for OEM? I've been around some OEM, and they put a lot of stock into that journalist type. I write for this magazine. We were at a couple places where these manufacturers were kissing the ass of like the magazines, and we already had a YouTube video out while they were still asking questions, and we were kind of just like, it's just like, it's crazy to us that was happening. And maybe it's gotten better now and they start taking more stock into the YouTube side of things.
I think they're finally learning somewhat. But dude, I didn't get my first press car until 2018. Like, it took that long.
I've still never had a press car.
And honestly, I still kind of have to beg, and I rarely, because to me, unless it's something really unique and really niche, I usually just don't do them, because I think people kind of realize that the cars I film are more story driven than anything. They could be fast, they could sound cool, but people want to know what's the story behind it. And that's how I see it. Like, what's the history of it? Why did they choose this car? Why did they do this? When you get a car off the factory floor, it's data driven. Here, they did this. It pulls this many G's. Yeah. It does that. So you're completely right. What's really fascinating is I've been very fortunate to go to a lot of press events, like first drives, stuff like that. And that's really kicked off the last 3 years. It took that long. And so, like, when say the new Nissan Z comes out or the new Z06 comes out, I've been fortunate enough to be one of those first people to drive it. But you're right. I'll never forget, there's this one event I went to, and they had a super fancy dinner. I mean, I think it was like a Michelin 3-star dinner or whatever. Yeah. And it was like $300 a plate if we were to pay for it. And I'll never forget, it was me and some other YouTubers. And we're like, I know we should like this. I know we should be appreciative. It's like caviar and very niche food. And it's like a 12-course meal. And all the journalists were like, yes, this is exquisite. This is wonderful. Blah, blah, blah. What we're used to. Very bougie. And all of us were like, hey, can we go get room service after this? Like, it just shows the type of person of being catered to. And I mean, the film industry is very much the same. Like, say you have what's called talent, an actor, an actress. They will be treated like they're babies, right? They'll be like, oh, do you want all the green Skittles only in this package? Yep. And you see it. It's really bizarre. And it's not as bad as that. But with OEMs, I have really good relationships. I think journalists think
they're that, though.
I agree.
I think most of them think that they're that level.
Not all of them, but I don't want to throw shade, but there are a few that I have met who...
You don't have to. I will throw the shade.
Well, they give that kind of vibe of like, oh, you just film YouTube videos. Mm-hmm. It's like, well, so do you. That's where you bring it in and going, you're doing the same thing, except I'm doing it for literally a tenth of the budget in the same viewership.
And I own this.
Yeah. Like, and it's mine.
Yeah.
And what's really great is I don't have to cater to anybody. I can be honest. Yep. And like, how bad I felt about, like, I drove the new Nissan Z. The car I was the most excited about last year, and I just started saying some things I didn't like about it. Like, I felt bad, but I owed it to my audience to tell the truth, and I can tell the truth. And the cool thing is Nissan was cool with it. You know what I mean? They're like, oh, we get it. We get why you didn't like that thing. So-and-so. I mean, we don't really like it, but we get it.
Yeah.
And
it's usually an accountant that's the blame.
But what I'm saying is one of those things where,
guys.
Right, but I appreciate Nissan inviting me. It was cool. It was great. They treated me like a freaking king, right? They put me in a nice hotel. They did all these things. But it's one of those things where if I go to a hotel or like, say you get picked up by a limo driver, right? I feel weird. If somebody picks up my bag, I'm like, I got it. I'm a big boy. I can pick up my own bag and stuff like that.
Well, they want to make you feel obligated to say nice things about them.
Right. And
they treat you that well. It's hard to be like, It sucked.
Do you know who does a really good job with press events is Toyota. Toyota does really good. And that's not me saying like they treated me well. They did treat me well. You know, he'll probably not care if I share this story, but Mike Tripp, who's like one of the head honchos at Toyota, he's one of the nicest executives at one of the big OEMs I've ever met. And I'm at Long Beach Formula Drift, and the night before was the Corolla GR unveil. I was very excited for this car. They come out, they nailed the unveil. It was fun, short, and sweet.
Great
Here's
car.
our car, amazing car. They do donuts in front of us. Hell yeah, they're using it.
Yep.
They're doing all this cool stuff. Oh yeah, by the way, Turk's drifting is tomorrow. Go see it at FD. And then he won. Like it's rainbow, right?
Yeah.
I come down the elevator to go get breakfast. Walk out and there's Mike Tripp. I'm like, uh-oh, am I in trouble? Because I used to kind of poke fun at Toyota because they weren't making anything cool, right? They're building just like Priuses or whatever. There's no sports cars
They
for like
stopped
10
in like
for like 10 plus years.
Yeah.
And he came up and he's like, David? I'm like, yeah. I was like, how's it going? He's like, hey man, I just want to say thanks. I'm like, thanks? Or something along those lines. Mike, if you're watching, I'm sorry. You said something really nice. You said,
They're watching, come on the podcast.
yeah, I know. I said, hey man, what do you mean? Or he just was really cool about me talking kind of smack about them.
Yeah.
And I go, what changed? Like what changed at Toyota? And he's like, eating breakfast with me. He goes, leadership, better leadership. And then he broke it all down for me like a normal person, not like some like, well, we in our reports here, like, I don't care about that. Tell me what happened. And he goes, we just wanted to build cool shit again. I was like, thank you. That's it.
I really respect Toyota for doing that because they, from my opinion, have the ability to build the coolest shit.
Oh, they totally do.
And there's some companies lately that have gone the opposite way. The Blue Square is one of them. General Motors kind of really dropped the ball in their whole performance division, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Ford, still doing great.
Still doing good. Yeah.
Dodge, you know.
They're on something,
They
dude.
make horsepower, but the rest of their cars, the rest of the build, they can do horsepower, but everything else kind of suffers a little.
Yeah. And what's crazy, though, but I will say I admire Dodge for giving up trying to be something they're not.
Yeah.
Like when they finally figured out that the Hellcat motor worked, they're like, why are we trying to be like race cars versus the Camaro and the Mustang? Like, let's just ditch this. Let's just be dumb. And that's what I love. Like, they're just like, yeah, let's just throw this in everything. And it's funny. That could either be a criticism or it could be like, that's genius. Like, why wouldn't you do that?
Yeah.
And so when they leaned into the freaking Demon 170 the other day, I'm like, that is rad. That's cool.
I have some gripes about that, though.
I do too. But,
I have a
but it's
big
more.
one.
But I have the principle. The principle of it, I think, is cool. And the thing is, yeah, I don't know why they didn't show the ETs. That
I can't get past
really
that one.
bothered me.
And then they put it up. They put up what they claimed. Like it just did that. Like it's been 850, and then they just put it up there, or whatever they said.
I don't know.
I was like, that's a weird thing to do.
It was a little bizarre. But to me, like
it went like a 10 when you look at it. It went like a 10-0, which is fast.
I will say though, I feel like maybe the perfect conditions, the perfect driver, and the perfect everything. But I'm not defending it. I'm just saying, I guarantee you that's why they didn't show it, because there's no guarantee it was going to run that.
There was a guarantee it wasn't going to run.
Right.
That's what was guaranteed.
Yeah. But I think the actual theory of selling an 1,000 horsepower car is just bananas, right? For that price. It's not cheap, but for that price.
Unfortunately, if a Tesla Plaid would have beaten it down the track that night,
that wouldn't have looked good.
It just hurts. Because you could do that with a Plaid and run back to back.
Yeah,
to back
Kyle
to
from
back.
Boosted Boys, what are you doing?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, yeah, it's cool, and like it does like a wheelie, but that's I don't know.
I will say though, for Joe Blow that just wants to buy a car and just be done,
be loud and obnoxious.
That's what it's for.
Yeah.
So like I never take. I mean, okay, there is like the Cobra Jet program, which is crazy, right? It does like 8s consistently.
Yeah, but no VIN number.
Right, no VIN, just like the Copos, same thing. I get that. Like, hey, I made it in life. I don't feel like building a car. I just want to go drag race it and be consistent. Great, go have fun. But yeah, the fact that it's street legal and all that, that's going to be interesting
Yeah, it
to
does
see
make
what
it
it
cool.
does.
with a parachute.
And the parachute.
They do good on the marketing sense to the people that don't drag race. But
I think that's what I like about it. It's not so much the car itself, right? It's more like the marketing behind their strategy, because they're just like, we're crazy and we know it, you know, kind of thing.
I'm a little skeptical of the timing deal, though, because somebody in the booth had to type that in and put it up on the board. And NHRA runs that track, and they had to basically give that a stamp of approval to put up a fake time.
Oof, big oof.
Because it's not like I drag race all the time. If somebody did that for me, I'd hope to be called out. I would deserve to be called out.
Also, I think it hits home for you, because to get an 8.9 for you at first is like, God dang it, you know, to get it there.
Yeah.
Yeah, because people are in their garage or shops doing it themselves.
To do even 10s being an EPA legal vehicle is a cool thing.
It's pretty bananas.
You can lean into that. I'm okay with it. But claiming something you're not, I get a little frustrated by.
I really want to see the real world results. Like people buying them, going to the track and seeing what happens. That's what I want.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
And I was at TX2K that weekend, and I was like, man, it would have been really cool if they brought one out and ran the streetcar class.
Oh, yeah.
Talk
about
about
it makes sense.
an unveil.
Yeah.
Go run a class. Go put somebody in there. Have them freaking run
Is that the
thing.
class that's like 4,000 plus pounds?
They have a heavyweight class.
Okay, yeah.
And then they have a streetcar class, and they split it up A, B, C, and D. So they could have put him in D class, which is like an 890 to win. Go run that.
No, it wouldn't be consistent.
The heavyweight, no shot, because a CTSV won that went 730 at 4,000 pounds.
And we're just like, yeah, it's a sedan.
And that Viper went 680 at 4,000 pounds.
So crazy.
And he was like, should I go in the heavyweight just to be that guy?
There's some good racing this year, though.
Yeah, it was a good event. Well, bad with rain, sleet, but
I only watched the YouTube videos. I wasn't there, to be clear.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm going to take a quick break. Pee.
I'm going to pee too.
So, do you think some car companies should not EV? Should stay away from the EV market?
Totally.
I feel like they're all in this like bandwagon that nobody else is on.
So I have something to admit. I have been very up and down with the EVs, like emotionally.
I have no problem with them.
Okay, so I think on the surface level, if I can nutshell the explanation, I think EVs have a good place. Like if you're local, like going to work, blah, blah, I totally get it, right? It's great.
Yep.
What I have a problem with is where they get the material. So the more I dig into it, and also going back to OEMs, I get to go to a bunch of press events now, right? And unveils and stuff like that. All they talked about last year was electrification. And I was getting so tired of it, right? Not because I'm against it. It was just like, we're talking about something else, right? And because everybody, when they would talk about it, would sound like they were like the first people to do it, right? They're like, we're advancing the so-and-so. We're like, no, like,
it's like a 20-year-old market at this point.
And at the same time, the big one was, this was a big reality check. So I'm at an unveiling. I'm not going to say which one it was, but I'm at an unveiling for a different car. But before then, they unveiled an EV. And there's this guy next to me who, you ever see somebody like at a car event, you can be like, they don't look like they're really into cars, but you know, whatever.
Yeah.
I always try to be friendly with anybody I'm sitting next to at an event. I'm like, hey man, like, where are you from? Blah, blah, blah. He's like, oh, I write for this magazine, blah, blah, blah. I'm like, hey, you excited about this sports car they're about to unveil? He goes, oh no, why would I ever be excited about an internal combustion engine? Like, that's ruining the earth. Like, why would I ever do that? And I look over, I go, what was that magazine you wrote for? It was like an only EV magazine. Like just echo chamber, like crazy. And when you learn that, okay, like fossil fuels fossil fuels also can get sourced in unethical ways. We know that.
Yeah.
But the thing is with me is, yes, we're all guilty because of the phones and our laptops and everything else. But what I do have a problem with is the demand. When you're taking 73% of the cobalt and lithium from mines and slave labor in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, I have a problem. And at the same time, I go, okay, so the phones and stuff, all the companies pretend like it doesn't come from
They're
there.
so ethical.
It's whatever. Like we
Apple's
get
so
it.
ethical.
We get it from Australia, which by the way, it's only like don't fact check. I know it's somewhere in the 70%.
Yeah.
But 3% is ethical, like in Australia, for example, and like that's it. And these poor people are no protective gear, no shoes. Lithium
videos.
Lithium's toxic to your lungs. It just goes on and I could go on and on. But the point of the matter is when you have a bunch of people who pretend like this is the high and mighty way, and then you ask them point blank, where do you get the stuff? Like what is your supply chain? Where do you get it? They go, oh, like they always avoid it.
Yep.
Most people avoid it. Because if you take one iPhone and then you take one Tesla, not shooting shots at Tesla specifically, but just as an example.
Or a good jumping off point for this.
Right. That's like thousands times more lithium and cobalt, right? And then you realize that our grid can't handle it. It just keeps going and going and going, right? And I think, like I said, I think there's a time and place. I think Mazda was really onto something with Skyactiv, their internal combustion engines, which were like super high compression. You'll find it in like the Indy, Miata, stuff like that. And their emissions are pretty low, including its entire life cycle, like its entire life of, let's say, 200,000 miles or so. Then you look at building one, getting the materials from here, getting the materials from there, all putting it on a ship,
shipping them around the world.
To like, everyone knows solar panels are not great either.
They take
as
like
an
90
example,
years to finally be worth it, and they last like 30.
And not just, and also like the big thing too is, are they really going to be recycled? Are they really? It's one of those things where renewable energy, I get it, but if you look at getting fossil fuels, getting this, there's no clear solution. I want to be very
corn-based fuel.
Right, but
great solution.
I was on the side of hydrogen for a while, but then I learned how they got the hydrogen. I'm like, okay, that's not great either.
Corn-based fuel.
but then thanks, Koenigsegg. And then along with Porsche, doing the new synthetic fuel, which is very promising, but it's too expensive. I think it's just they take water and air essentially. Forgive me. They do a really clean process to make this gasoline, but it's like $40 a gallon or something. So that's not practical, and it's going to take forever to make it for the whole world.
Yeah.
So I could go on a long tinfoil rant about all this stuff.
It gets endless.
It goes endless because, it goes the same with powering your house. You could argue for nuclear. You could argue, well, fusion's almost here. Fusion is not almost here.
I'll argue for the nuclear every day.
Yeah, me too. I'm 100% on the side of it. I have friends who work at plants who break down everything that happens there. Mm-hmm. And they're like, listen, it is the safest thing ever now. We're not in a Soviet-run country where nobody cares about anything. Chernobyl and the 3 Mile Island, like that. Of course, that's terrible.
But that was like
we're
80s.
going to talk about history, and I'm going to go super into it. But yeah, I think times have changed, protocols have changed, people have changed, and with the car stuff, as long as car companies were just like, we'll sell some EVs and we'll still sell some of these, but the way they present it is combustion's the devil, right? It is the worst thing ever. And I'm like, it advanced humanity more than any other invention ever. And and also emissions are down from around the world since 80 years ago because of catalytic converters and all that.
And we don't have lead-based fuel anymore.
No, and China pollutes more than pretty much anybody who's a wealthy country.
But also, if you want to be good for the environment, don't have a car. Go live in the city.
Use public transportation.
Oh my goodness, you don't have to drive a 6,000-pound Tesla around for one person?
But they're going to rebuttal that, Cooper. They're going to say, but the United States doesn't have a great public, which they're pretty much right.
Go live in a city.
New York City has the best public transport.
Every city.
Yeah.
If you live in a city, you can work in that city you live in. That's the only way to really...
As Tom Segura says, bikes.
Yeah, own a bike.
Yeah, own a bike.
I got an electric bicycle, and that thing's great.
Oh yeah,
it only has a battery this big for one person.
Instead of, I don't know, a whole skateboard.
Yeah.
And
That's kind of where I always get the thing. I'm like, there's no shot a 5,000-pound vehicle for one person to get around is ever going to be the most efficient.
There's no way. And it's really weird
seeing an electric scooter.
So
great.
You talking about journalists earlier, it's weird seeing some people drink this Kool-Aid. You know what I mean? They're like, we have to end combustion. It's the only way. And I'm like, not right now. Like, we might find a solution in the future, but right now we're kind of stuck with this.
Yeah.
Or we just find a way to get other countries to stop polluting as much. And that's not going to happen.
See, I'm not super worried about the pollution. I think we're very, I think as humans, we think we're really good at destroying things. And I think we're not as good as we like to think we are. We're very in our own way where we're like, we're so good at destroying the world. We get destroyed in 5 years if we wanted to.
I do want to be clear, like, when it comes to climate change, it's one of those things where I'm very, like, historical about it, right? I'm like, well, the Earth has done this and it has done that. Do I believe that we've probably
dynamic climate.
Do I believe that we probably did something? Yeah, totally. I do believe we did something. That's my opinion. But do I think it's apocalyptic? No. I don't think it's apocalyptic at all.
Yeah, I think the Earth will laugh at that.
Yeah, you know, I'm in this weird, I'm very bipartisan with almost any issue, right? Because I like hearing arguments with both things, including EVs. But what I have noticed with EVs, we're going down. Nobody has a good, solid argument. Nobody has, like, other than that's bad, right? They don't go, that's bad. I'm like, okay, tell me why this is better. And they go, well, the EV vehicle is more efficient. Well, duh. But the technology, because you only have two little motors and whatever. But getting it there, that's my issue.
Toyota nailed it, 20 years ago on the Prius?
Yeah, it was perfect.
They have hardly changed it. It's without flaw.
Yeah, the Prius is really, okay. By the way, I got to see the Prius, the new one, before it came out, and I hated that I liked it. I was like, they pulled the tarp out, I was like, oh, no way. Like, it's a nice looking car.
But even like when Priuses came out, people were like, yeah, but how long are they going to last? You see ones on the road that are still way old.
Yeah.
And Priuses don't seem to have that many issues. They seem to just keep on chugging away.
Bro, one of my friends, his name's Alex, he has one, and he has beat the ever-loving snot out of it and, like, gone off-roading it and all this. Yeah. It's fine.
They just get handed down. They don't disappear.
No, like, he bought that car for $1,000, and he just drove it around. And think about it. It's great because he saves so much gas, blah, blah, blah. Yep. I think the future is going to be, in a nutshell, like, we're going to have our toys, and then we're going to have our daily whatever it is. But that's kind of how it is now.
It's going to be tough for it to be an electric car, especially, like, out here. I'm kind of, like,
what are you going to do?
And, like, you know, the electric's probably not going to be good enough for everyone. We get hurricanes and stuff.
That's the factors that they don't think about. They think of LA. They think of New York City. They think of, oh, you're only driving a few blocks. Like, why do you need a combustion motor? They don't think about Joe Blow in Kansas, where they can't even get 93 octane, right? And I learned
the best argument I heard was, instead of trying to get Americans to buy electric cars, why don't we try to get people in third world countries to buy electric scooters? You know, them things that are two-stroke and burning oil and stuff. Like, if imagine you switched like a city, like, you know, like India, you see
Johannesburg
all those people. Exactly. Like, if you switched all those guys to electric single-person scooters,
you'd probably
man, all of a sudden that whole place would be more livable.
Oh, 100%. I mean, I'll never forget though, man. I went to China in 2016 and I flew in. I looked out the window and I said, that's a weird call out. Oh, that's smog. Like, I saw thick smog my very first time. Because I remember seeing LA have some back in the day, but not like anymore. It's not really the same. It's not as bad.
Yeah, you used to just sit in the valley. Like, you would look over it, like, bad.
But now that's like when you fly into Beijing, it's like twice as bad as that was. And you're like, how do people live here? And but I think people are limited. I was told this by a citizen. I don't know if it's true, but they were saying they're limited to like driving their car one day, every other day or something. They needed to carpool and all this. I mean, you have a country with 1 billion people. You know, what do you do?
Yeah, and they're all very close quarters.
Yeah, most people.
The U.S. is pretty spread out.
We're so spread out. Like most countries live on one coast.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Australia is an exception because they have Perth over
They
here.
still kind of live on one coast, though.
Yeah, most people live this side. Or I guess this side.
There's nothing out for the most part.
It's more farming out on the other end.
Even most of it is just nothingness, just outback, like mines.
The U.S. is the ultimate one. It's the number one market people want. At the same time, it's the ultimate testing ground for this technology, because when it came to Tesla really coming, blowing up, I remember it was like that. Like, it was weird.
Yeah.
Because they had the Lotus-based
After the
Roadster, and it could go, 40 miles? It couldn't barely go anywhere.
And then the S, and it was just like the S forever.
That was it.
They still haven't changed that thing.
No, I saw a first-gen S on the way down today. I was like, oh, yeah. Had all the chrome trim on it and all that.
Grill. It actually had
a grill. I remember how controversial that was when they removed the grill. They're like, I don't know how I feel about it. And now I like it more without it, I think.
It's a very aerodynamic car. I'll give them that. I mean, they did good on that. Same with like the Prius.
I think Fisker designed it. I'm pretty sure.
Fisker.
He's an interesting dude.
Have you seen the new cars that they have now?
It gets owned by a Chinese company.
The one that's like Viper based, and then they have one that's LSA.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, they have two cars that one has the it's a legitimate Viper-based vehicle.
That's crazy.
So you could still almost buy them, but they're really nice inside and stuff. I'm pretty sure it's still Fisker nameplate.
Yeah.
But that was a weird car.
Yeah, it was super weird. The lead singer AC/DC down here had that.
Really?
He had a Fisker Karma.
And then they had the solar on the roof.
Yeah, it's so weird.
That was at least fairly smart. You'd think solar on a roof of like a Tesla would be smart.
Yeah, you'd think so. You'd think so.
There's a lot of if they're not doing solar on their roof, they must know why. It's a good indication.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just, it's such a weird topic to talk about in general because we're car people. We have inherent bias to that. Like we love racing and we love all this stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, the EV stuff, I'm still like, it's like this. My soul is like the stock market about it. I'm like, okay, that doesn't make sense, and it just keeps coming back.
Like I like what the Corvette did with the hybrid. I think that's a good
the
route to take.
I think the E-Ray's sick. I was like, there you go, because it took the philosophy of the 918 that I touched on earlier and trickled it down. And it's like the fastest 0 to 61 right now.
There was a big hybrid push for a while, like. The supercars, they did the LaFerrari, the P1, and then the 918, and then
Trinity.
It just stopped.
And yeah, because it's funny, I met a race car driver for Lexus, I think a year ago. He was like, I really wish we just all went hybrid. Because, we could still have our sports cars. Yep. They would probably be way faster and just be fun.
I am big on hybrid. I think that's the move.
Me too.
But not like i8 hybrid.
Right.
Or not NSX hybrid.
Fun fact.
Corvette hybrid.
I rode in the first i8 in America back in 2014, and I was in Times Square, and it was cool seeing people's reaction. But when you told people it was a 3-cylinder, they're like, what? Because I think in the movie, in Mission Impossible Ghost Protocol, that's where it really kind of showed its concept car. And it's pretty close to the concept. I was pretty surprised. It made like a V10 sound in the movie or something electronic, like an EV, like woo,
like some cool.
And then you get it, and it's like, good opportunity, or missed opportunity.
Good looking car too.
I think it's a cool looking car. I love the front, especially.
They're
the
pretty
front
good
looks
looking
sick.
cars.
Those will go down eventually, I think.
Yeah, I think they're in a weird spot for sure. There's a couple cars like that. I think the NSXs are in a weird spot too, though.
Man, you know what I wish Acura did with that? I know it's completely impractical. I wish that they went a simpler route with that car. If they did like 60, 70 grand, manual, mid-engined, and just called it.
Yeah.
They would have sold so many of them, I feel like.
Yeah, like what they did with the first one, they could have tried to replicate that even a little bit.
Yeah, with some modern tech in it.
Try to capture that again.
The problem was with the NSX is it was a really good car. I drove it and I was really impressed by it. But the problem was on paper, if you're a buyer looking at the statistics, you know it was nearly identical numbers wise, an R35, like to the 10th, right? 0 to 60, everything else. They're like, why would I pay 3 times as much when I could just get this?
I think that was like the first woman designed car.
Oh, was it?
Yeah, like woman designed sports car.
The torque vectoring in that car is amazing. Like when you're on a road course, but that's the only way you can feel it.
You never see them.
No,
Never see those
that's
things.
going to be one of those like, whoa cars, I feel like later in life. But yeah, they were just super underwhelming for people. Plus they spent 10 plus years developing it. They couldn't make up their mind. They had to change the body again. Just like the LFA. LFA was the same way. They went aluminum first. They said, oh, screw that. Blah, and went to carbon.
Yeah, but those things
rebuilt
are
it
still
again.
so cool.
They're so
But nobody
cool,
wanted them.
which is crazy.
But they were a lot of
they're
money.
$500,000.
Yes.
But now they're like
You're
$2
comparing them
million.
to like a V12 from Ferrari or from Lamborghini.
Yeah, what's really unfortunate is that, those cars were priced out of existence. And there's only 300 of them or 500 of them?
Very few.
Less than 1,000.
The
I'll go with that.
LC500 is very
That
similar
car is
looking.
awesome. Like,
And those
it's
don't get
so
any
good.
credit, I feel like.
Every time I've reviewed one, it's been like pulling teeth to get people to watch
They
it.
get no credit.
No, because I don't know. Maybe, okay, it is expensive. It's a $100,000 car. The one I drove was 93, and I drove the Spider and I drove the hardtop. I drove the hardtop on Road Atlanta, and it did great. I was surprised, but dude, the interior's super cool. The door cards have this like organic feel to them. I'm like, this is a beautiful car. The back of it is very LFA. Actually, no, it's very FT1 before we got the Supra.
Yeah.
That is like closer to the FT1, I feel like could have been.
I think 90 grand to 100 grand is the new 60 grand.
Which is crazy.
Like in the last like 3 years, a new car 90 grand is 3 years ago 60 grand car. Bang for your buck wise. Supercar level of like excitingness.
I remember
like my wagon.
Oh my God,
I think
dude.
I paid 56 for that car.
Okay, that seems fair.
And
for that car.
That feels cheap now. That feels so cheap for what I have.
My 10-speed car was 30. So I stole that thing, right?
But like if you want like a new GT500, which is comparable to what a V1 wagon, a V2 wagon was at the time, like level of car, I feel like you got. They're what, 120?
They were supposed to be under 100, but
C701, what, 250? And
that's actually, ironic, a very comparable car. I've driven them back to back before, and they were.
I don't mean like comparable exactly on like, oh, you're gonna, performance wise, but like when they came out and like what they kind of offered, supercharged auto
car.
But they're 220.
It's insane. It's insane. Well, so
$250,000.
The new Z06 going for 300. I mean, I drove it on track. It was awesome. It was great, but it wasn't 300 grand to me. I mean, I don't have 300 grand, but at the same time, it's like, no, I had a great time. Thanks for the ride, kind of thing.
You could buy a Huracan for that for less.
That's the problem. It's the badging war. You're like, I could go buy a exotic car for this.
You can buy a Huracan and room to grow to like a twin turbo Huracan for the same price.
Big time.
And they're getting very affordable now.
Yeah, dude, you used to pay $300 to twin turbo your Huracan. It's
now
insane.
you can DIY it. They sell kits.
What world do we live in, Cooper?
Yeah,
it's crazy.
I talked to Aaron at Ninth Moto about this. I was like, it's almost you're so deaf to them because there's so many. Like you go,
it was like seeing a ghost when you used to see them.
Yeah,
like when you saw a twin turbo Lambo, you're like, that is the rarest thing I've ever seen.
I don't know how loud that is back there.
I remember in the 90s, and look, this is all relative because money was different.
Yeah.
But I remember one of our neighbors got a Mercedes SUV. This is probably in like 1998. And I remember my mom going, they really can't afford that, a $30,000 car. I don't know why they bought that. Mm-hmm. I was like, 30 grand, wow. So expensive because our Windstar was probably 15, our little minivan, and now in hindsight you're like, wow, it's just such a different world.
Tahoe is like 100.
It's insane. Like, why buy an Escalade anymore? It's silly.
It doesn't make any sense though because cars have went up so much. Like even my CTSV new was 60.
Right.
I'm pretty sure.
Right.
And now new car of that caliber is 120. They've doubled in 10 years. Full double.
It's really sad. I mean, even the used car market. I mean, everybody knows, but I'm still surprised the bubble hasn't really burst that hard yet. It's still pretty up there, even for cars that should not be as expensive as they are. Z's are a great example.
I've owned my CTSV since 2017, and I don't think it's dropped in value. I bought it for 56.
You know what kind of?
I think it's probably about the same price.
You know what that kind of reminds me of is Terminators. Those cars have kept their value since the day they came out, and now they're going up again. And it's a plastic interior, it's just, you're getting that motor and that's all you're getting.
Yeah. If you have like a clean 4th gen Camaro now too, like,
oh yeah,
basically anything 90s that's nice. If you got like a nice 240, name your price.
It's so funny how like 5 years ago, if I saw like an ad that says I'm selling my 240, I'd be all over that. Now I just ignore it. I'm just like, no, I know what they're gonna ask. Something crazy. Not worth it to me, dude.
It's a tough deal. So back to the journalist. Do you think print is just dying?
Oh, yeah.
Or do you think it may make a resurgence because now we're so inundated with video that maybe people will be desiring
to be like, I want to hold something in my hand again. Yeah, like analog. It's like, great. You
get such quick information now that you almost kind of want like, hey, can you slow it down for me?
Take a step back.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it as well. It kind of reminds me of a record player. People are buying vinyl again, right? They're buying record players, they're buying vinyl. Generations of kids who never had to use them, they just think it's neat. And I think magazines could do that, but when you talk to some magazines, it's just like the ink, the paper, the money, the distribution, when they could just hit upload on their website or do the coding for their website and be done, right? So I like that idea. I think that's cool because when my dad wanted to go to Barnes & Noble and drink his coffee at Starbucks, I would just go through magazines the whole time. And there was something special about that. There was something special about like physically going, oh, I'm learning about this car and that's so cool. But now, like you said, we're numb to everything.
I think the only time magazines I would ever be like, oh, I'm gonna grab a magazine would be at an airport when I was a kid.
Yeah.
That would be the only time I'd grab a magazine. Even like you go to Publix and they have half of an aisle is a magazine rack. You're like, really?
Yeah.
You haven't gotten rid of that yet?
Yeah, it's weird.
There's not something better you can put there?
Especially the freaking tabloid section. You're like, how does that stuff survive?
Yeah.
I just don't get that. It's unless you're like some celebrity, because some celebrities, they actually get a cut of every paparazzi photo that gets sold to a magazine. So that's kind of how that's surviving.
So it would be cool to, these magazines have the ability to print basically books. There's water if you need.
Oh, thank you.
They have the ability to print like cool things. Maybe try to make it more of a special thing to own,
like
and
an occasion thing,
book almost. Like you leave it on your counter. Like it'd be cool to have like a cool one here for like
something hefty,
something that's a little more like thought out.
Might be more expensive, but it's cool.
Don't print as many, but print more meaningful ones.
Like what I always liked was when they had a sports car and they had like, I don't know if the word blueprint is correct, but it would be like a tear down. Like it was a diagram, everything, but in color, and like it wasn't like a user manual. Like you could actually be like, it would have these little, the legend in the corner. Like number 1 is this, number 2 is this. I know this is a really weird comparison, but bear with me. I wanted to be a paleontologist when I was a kid, so I'm still pretty obsessed with dinosaurs and stuff.
Diagrams really get you.
Yeah, because I would go to the library and open a book and go, oh, this is how a skeleton works. And it would show me like, oh, the T-Rex's femur is here or whatever. And it's kind of like that with cars. When you tear it down, it's like this mythical creature almost, right? And you're like, oh, so that's how they engineered this. And especially with the newer cars with all the technology in them. The E-Ray. Try breaking down the E-Ray to somebody who was carbureted cars 50 years ago.
Yep.
You'd be like, so where do I turn the knob? Oh, no, Dad, you just go.
But then, to completely go off there, I look at the E-Ray and I'm like, that's stupid. We can't tune them. I'm like, I have no desire.
Bro.
I'm like, leave it. I don't even.
DCUs are the bane of my existence.
C7's great.
Oh, yeah, that car is still awesome.
You can modify a C7 until your heart's content.
Yep, still an awesome car.
But then you look at the E-Ray and you're like, I don't think anybody's ever going to be able to tune that.
You're right. I think you're right. And at the same time, just locked ECUs in general, they bug me. They really bug me because I asked an engineer at the proving ground. I got to go to the proving grounds, GM proving grounds, and it was a really great experience.
Where was that? Is that in Michigan?
Milford, Michigan. Yeah, it's where they had the big oval for testing, and I saw the Z06 testing, which is
It's interesting because then the Corvette Museum and factory is down in
Bowling Green. Yeah, have you been there?
I've been.
It's
yeah.
great.
I've gotten to drive on that track. A few
NCM.
times. Yeah.
That is a wicked track. It gave me a pucker factor on the tabletop when you're doing like $150 over that. I was like,
we drove
God.
a Hertz rent-a-car Camaro.
Dude, that's even
Camaro,
sketchier.
And I was chasing an instructor in a 4-cylinder Camaro, I think it was.
Shout out to Andy Pilgrim, who was my instructor, and it was the first time I drove the C8 ever. It was on that track, and I was like, oh my God, like. It has the little Laguna Seca style corkscrew.
Yep.
It has elements of the Nürburgring on it. It's got it takes like every legendary racetrack and put it into one. That is one of the most underrated racetracks in America, I think.
It is a really cool spot over there.
Yeah.
If you buy a Corvette, go take delivery at the museum.
It's so worth it.
It's
super
100%.
cool.
You get to see it sitting there. You get to see it like out there, and then they try to sell you some dirt from a sinkhole.
Did you get to go see the sinkhole?
Oh, they love showing the sinkhole. That's the biggest thing that's happened to them.
I'm probably financially completely wrong on this, but I feel like that like really saved their museum. Like hyper ironic.
They lost like, 2 ZR1s, but now they sell dirt and the sinkhole experience.
Did they tell you the story about that C4 Corvette that was never supposed to exist?
They probably did, but anytime you say C4, I'm kind of like, okay, you lost me.
No, I don't like him either. But the story was hilarious. So basically, a guy was supposed to crush it, but it was raining outside, and he had brand new boots on, and he was like, I don't want to get my boots dirty, so I'll just hide this car in this bush over here. And no one found it for like decades. And they're like, yo, this car doesn't have a VIN number on it. It was never supposed to exist. And so now it's in the museum. But yeah, it was just in a bush for decades next to the factory and nobody noticed it.
They just didn't even pay attention.
Yeah,
That's
all
awesome.
Because of some dude's boots. He didn't want to get dirty.
Isn't that sad that they crush those cars?
You know what's really sad is like when I do a press event and I'm driving, let's say, I did this thing for Ford Performance, and I drove, what was it? Insert performance car here. It didn't have a VIN number on it, right? Yeah. And then they go, yeah, after this is over, they go get crushed. You're like, oh, like, just had this amazing experience, and you're just going to go crush them. They're like, yeah, it's the law. It's what they have to do.
When we drove the C8s out in Vegas for the first time.
Yeah, I didn't go to that one, yeah.
They had the worst specs. They had horrible spec options. We got this like maroon one with this tan interior, and then like
that's a rough one.
Like
I've
white
driven that
dashboard,
one.
And
with the like, red stitching.
Yeah, it was just like rough spec. And there was some that were good, but the one that they handed us, I was like, man, who picked this one out? Like, if they're trying to show off a little.
Did I tell you what happened at the Z06 event?
No.
Okay, so I get there, I land in Pittsburgh, and we have the presentation, and it's all really nice and it's really well done. They have the cutout, and I could look at the car. Well, they had kind of a bougie-ish dinner, but I was starving, and I don't do well with seafood, and it had seafood in it. So I eat it, don't think anything of it. Next day comes by. It's my turn to do lead follows in the Z06, not the Z07 yet. This is a very important distinction. So I do, and I've never been on Pittsburgh's track, and it's so much elevation change. I went up, down, hard lefts, hard brakes. Yep. Like you're pulling a G just hitting the brakes to do some of these turns, right? And I do the lead follow. I'm like, okay, I feel a little funky, but it's probably nothing. Whatever, it's a track day. You get a little funky sometimes. Come back. Then it was time for open lapping. I go out by, and I learn the track, go faster and faster. I'm like, okay, I don't feel so good. I come back, I go, hey guys, hate to ask you, can you guys give me Dramamine or something? Is that okay for anti-nausea? They go, we legally can't give you that. I go, oh, they go, we have these though, and they're the stupid bracelets. I'm like, guys, those don't work for me. Band. And they're like, it's your only option. I'm like, okay. So I put on 4 of them, and I'm just like, oh, it's like a pressure point thing. The theory is, I'm like, whatever. I'm
placebo.
hoping it. Look, I'm open-minded. I'm like, I hope this works. Then it's time for the Z07, which is so much better. Like, you don't realize how much of a jump it is. It's one of those times, like the Corolla GR, the Maurizio edition, the top tier one. You don't want to admit it's that much better because it's the most expensive one. Right?
Yeah.
You're like, oh no, you can just modify the other one. No, the Maurizio is the best one, but there's only 200 of them. The Z07's the exact same way. You're like, oh my God, it drives so much better, and I don't want to admit it. So we go out, it has better tires on it. It has really great aero, carbon fiber wheels, your turn-ins better, everything's better. You're in a race car. I go out there, and now I have the track pretty much down. And I'm going faster, and I'm going faster, and I'm going faster. And then finally, to give you perspective on the spec, all red interior. All of it. The dashboard, the seats, the door cards, there's no black. It's just red and carbon. I turn over, and how you know where the pit lane is, there's a big water tower. And I remember looking up at the water tower and going, I'm not going to make it. And I had a Hans device on. I had the whole 9. And I pull in, and imagine a parking lot where they got like the diagonal spaces. Well, all the press cars are supposed to be parked over here. I only made it to this one. I pull over, I throw the door open, and I pull the helmet out. I go, bleh, I just throw my absolute brains up. I'm so embarrassed. And the guy who was instructing us that day was some really good British racing driver. I'm so sorry, I can't remember your name. But he comes, he's like, oh my God, mate, are you okay? I'm like, yeah, hold on. So I go to the press box area, like the media building, and I think to myself, you're probably not going to get to drive one of these this hard again. You have 2 choices. Do you man up and get this over with, or do you just not drive anymore? So I'm like, Steve-O, give me your soul. Went in and I just got the business done.
Get rid of it all.
I tried my, dude, it was so bad because these people from Chevy are in this press room, hearing me going, ah, like in this bathroom, just honking it down.
They're probably like, this car's great.
No, yeah. So I come out, the British racing driver's like, oh my God, you're back. I'm like, let's go. And I just went back out and just kept doing laps.
Yeah.
And dude, I still felt sick to my stomach. Now, to finish the story, naturally, when you're really nauseous, an instinct is to drink a lot of water. Well, the Z06 was such a popular press event, they booked it super tight. So we had only a limited amount of time on the street. You didn't have hardly any time on the street. You had mostly track. And then my flight was like an hour later. So I had to share the car with another journalist on the street. So I would like do my car review, and then it was his turn. And which is not ideal, it's just time-wise. Mm-hmm. And I'm driving. Remember, I only have like 30 minutes. And all of a sudden, I have to take the worst piss of my life. I mean, my ribs are cramping. Like, I'm tensing up. I'm getting the twitch right here. I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, the Z06. I can't even think. I'm stuttering. Like, this is the most painful experience of my life. And this dude's like, dude, are you okay? I'm like, I can't do this. And I'm usually so good at just toughening up and getting it done. So we pull over somewhere, just random. Of course, in the middle of Pennsylvania, there's nowhere to stop. I try to find a rest area, nothing. And I just find this one parking lot, and I just run into a field, and I get it done.
With the other journalist?
Yeah, just waiting in the car. And it must have been 2 minutes. And I come back, I get in the car, I pull out of the parking lot, I turn around, I go, no, it was an elementary school. I was like, I could have been in so much trouble, right? And but thankfully it wasn't on their grounds, if you're listening. But I was just like, thank God. And finally after that, I just spat out this whole review in like 20 minutes. I just like threw it up. But that's how good the Z07 is. It made me throw up.
Yeah, throw up. Couldn't even keep it together.
Yeah, but yeah, I told Chevy, like, your car's so good that it made me throw up. And that's so funny. Take me home now.
Have you driven any twin turbo C8s? Mm-hmm. It seems like
2 of them.
They're not as good as the owner might want you to think they are. Seems like they don't make all that much power for what they are.
Especially when people were first twin turboing them. I drove Mike's from Street Speed back in the day, right when the C8 was new. And he was only pushing like 3 pounds of boost or something. It was more like to say he did it.
Yeah, just
he
for
admitted
noise.
it too. He was like, hey guys, like, it's just cool, right?
Yeah.
I drove Sissio's. This was pretty good. It made like 900 wheel.
Yep.
It cornered well. It felt pretty good. It felt natural. But that was like, a year and a half later to almost 2 years later. So like that, you could tell the R&D was there. Fuel Tex is really good.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Theirs is really great.
Good. Yep.
Never rode or drove Amelia's, but yeah, like those were like the big ones, right?
Yeah, that worries me with like hers because she pushed it as far as you kind of can. It seems like.
Yeah, I mean everybody
She's broken the trans.
Everybody was kind of
times.
talking to each other in a way, like of, hey, how'd you break this ECU, or how'd you do that? Because the ECU is encrypted. Oh yeah, the entire reason I told you about the proving grounds, I asked why they lock the ECUs are like for cybersecurity. I'm like, get out of town. No, come on.
Yeah, cybersecurity. That's the EPA. You mean pushing them pretty hard. Ford's seems like they've tried to keep them open the most.
As long as they could. The dark horse is going to be locked.
I think that's part of the reason with the dual throttle bodies is because they're easier to encrypt and harder to mess with when you have dual throttle bodies.
Yep.
I think that was an easy answer because we all know you don't need two throttle bodies.
No, not
I make plenty of power.
Freaking awesome.
I make 1,500 horsepower on like an 80 millimeter throttle body.
Dude,
Granted, I have boost, 70 pounds of it, but
people never ever, and for some reason, people take me as like for some reason, people take me as like an anti-LS or any other engine because I like the Coyote engine. That's not true. I'm just saying my personal experience has been great, right? It's been really easy. It's been like, hey, I'm throw some force induction at this, and it just works because the heads are so
Coyotes are just so
they
good.
flow so good. I think if they were in a different car, they'd be taken more seriously by a lot more people. But a lot of people, when they don't know about it, they go, "Oh, it's a Mustang." Like,
yeah, but even the trucks, all
trucks
of the two-door short bed trucks,
they
are
rip, dude.
awesome.
Yeah, because Garrett has one, right?
He's had like 3, I think.
Yeah,
but they're just awesome trucks. Like they work so well. They you can tow with them because they got the 10-speed, and then you put a turbo on them, and you just rip. You have fun.
Yeah, I think when it comes to like bang for your buck, power per dollar, they're way up there. Like if you just want power quickly, I'm not saying that there's not better options. Like if you're trying to go 7s or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I mean, look at we talked about the green one, right? That thing is just ridiculous because that's still a Coyote platform, right?
It's still stock block. Coyote.
Okay. God, I forgot it was stock
2,500
block.
horsepower stock block.
My God, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, people just don't want to believe it. You know, you tell people all the time about that car, and I think, excuse me, burping a little bit. I think my favorite response is, that's not possible. Typically, I don't mean this in a mean way, but from the JDM side, like from 4-bangers, they're like, there's no way that's possible. I'm like, yeah, it's possible.
Well, even from the 2J side, like, I'm stock block and like 1,500, 1,600 is where things start to get a little like
dicey. Yeah.
Your time starts to become very limited.
Sure.
They're there for you.
Man,
you know that there's an expiration date not too far in your future.
What power is your Camaro pushing?
It's probably 1,500-1,600 ish.
Okay, got it.
It's not super low power, but Coyote stuff that's not that high.
Which is crazy because it's an aluminum block. Like that's what's so crazy about it. And a lot of people think since they're so big that they're heavy, and they're not really that heavy. They're 444 pounds, I think. It's really easy to remember.
Block.
Yeah, but I remember the first time, like this is like in 2011 when they like first came out.
Yeah.
I remember somebody tearing one down the first time in front of me, and I was like, oh, I get it. Like the heads just flow so good. They're like, and back when I remember the day I realized that motor was something else that the Blue Oval had done was there's this really scary Evo in town that everybody was scared of, and I put 5 cars on him, and I was bone stock, and I was like, wow. Because in my 3-valve,
Smurf at the point?
Yeah, it was Smurf with an intake and then intake Boss manifold.
Yeah,
that's all it was. I will say though, Smurf was a factory freak. It was built on a good day. I mean, that car for a Gen 1 Coyote, it made 430 wheel horsepower. The lowest it ever made in a dyno was 418. It was just a healthy one. It's still going. It's the same engine. I mean, it has 120K miles on it. And
And it was boosted that. Like,
Yeah,
you boosted it before you let it go. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I still have it.
Oh yeah,
I still have.
You do still have that car. All right,
yeah, I have it.
For some reason, I thought you were implying.
That's because I
let it
just
go.
don't drive it enough.
Ah,
But no, it. Like when I say all motor, I mean literally an intake and a tune, not like let me tear this down. I raced this dude in a vet years ago at Virginia Beach, and he lied. He was like, "Oh, I only have this," and then we were door to door, and he beat me by like this much, and I was like, I lost, but that was sick. You know, I was really stoked.
Yeah.
I just raced a Corvette, like wow.
And you're door to door with him.
Yeah, because the 3-valve, not a chance. You know what I mean? It wasn't even the same realm at the time, stock for stock. And he got out and he was like, "What the hell's done to your car?" I was like, "Nothing." And he was like, "I have a cam. I have ported, polished heads, blah, blah, blah." I was like, "Oh,
damn.
okay."
Sorry to hear that.
Yeah, I felt bad almost.
They're
but
so responsive to tuning those Coyotes, and they
you'll
just
gain
pick it up
60,
so
70
fast.
wheel, you know, but we go about those all day. Sorry. Yeah.
Well, let's talk overrated, underrated cars here. So I'm curious, what do you think is overrated? I don't really have an answer to this either, but it is a fun thought experiment because there's quite a few cars right now that are a little overrated. And I think, where do you think the new Supra falls on that? Overrated or underrated?
That's a really good one. So yeah, I have a very weird relationship with that car too. Because
It's a great car if you like BMWs.
Yeah. So you know what kills me about that car? And I'm specifically talking about the automatic one, the one we first got.
Yes.
I'll get into the manual.
The one
in a
that we
second.
mostly have.
Right. What kills you in that car is the BMW isms. If Toyota had changed the door chime,
Man,
the
that's
seatbelt
the thing that
chime,
bugged me so much.
So if the user interface was Toyota,
Yes.
we wouldn't really care that much. I personally don't think so. Once we got past it, the thing is every time I gave people rides in that car, they instantly were turned off. Like they wouldn't even give it a chance because they go, bling, that BMW piano chart, whatever it is.
That's so rough.
And you reach for your seatbelt. I'm like, God dang it, because it's ZF transmission, all that stuff. But what a lot of people don't realize is that Toyota did work on that motor in-house. So that is kind of cool. But yeah, I don't know if it's overrated. I just think it's a nice car. It's a nice car. I will say, though, I was swooned a little bit by the manual one. And I'm not one of those people who's like, it has to have a manual to be good. They changed the gearing in the transmission. They changed the gearing in the rear end. The transmission was tuned in-house. Like they built it in-house. It feels good.
I was surprised how small that car was.
It's so small. It's
you
like
see them
driving
and
a
they
hoodie.
look big.
You can't see out of it. That's the number one thing that drives
But there
me
is
nuts.
not many cars you can park that thing next to and it'll look big. Like even a Miata, they'll look about the same size.
What killed, I think, most of the car
They
scene.
look big in photos.
What killed most of the car scene was because we had that FT1. FT1's a gorgeous car. I saw it in person. And I was like, oh my God, build this right now. I'll sell everything that I own and I will buy this. And then they took Photoshop and free transform and squished it down to that chassis.
And it's not a bad looking car. I would daily drive one for sure.
I like the front a lot. The back looks aggressive too, but I think its strongest part.
Yeah, it's just weird how because cars aren't that small really anymore.
No, it's
don't
got
really
to
make
no.
anything that small.
I will say those cars get kind of dicey at the really high speeds. Like,
Yeah.
don't ask me, I know, but it starts getting a little. It's a tiny car, but yeah, coined by Matt Farah, it's like driving a hoodie because you can't really see out of it that well. I drove one. I got one of my worst tickets ever in that car. 104 and a 60.
Oh wow.
Yeah, thanks off the record. They helped me, but. Yeah, it was in Seattle. But yeah, as a car, it's really not as bad as we all thought. It's pretty good. And the B58 has proven its worth, I think. It's a solid engine. Do we still want to call it a Supra? I'm still a little on the fence about that. But then I feel like a hypocrite because the GR86 I love. Like, that car, if I didn't have all my other stupid project cars, I'd probably have bought one just to goof off in, put an angle cut on it and go have fun.
Yep.
And that car is built in a Subaru factory. But the interior, feels like a Toyota. That's the difference.
Yeah.
It's the environment you're in. And that makes you go, I'm in the new AE86, woo, because the dash is rectangular and it's like modernized, and that car fixed all the FRS's problems. It's just such a good car. Yep. And then I go, does that make me a hypocrite? You know, if I'm accusing them of collabing for the Supra, but not with this one. But maybe it's because, this is my theory, thinking out loud here, we were used to the FRS being that.
Yep.
I don't know. Because
that puts it in a weird spot. Because they were also similar. You could have had any one of them. Yeah. And it would all felt like, oh, you just have the same thing as everybody else.
BRZ FRS GT86.
Good looking car, wrong engine.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I remember because back in the day when I was looking at cars to trade that 3-valve in, I looked at those. Mm-hmm. And I remember when I first drove it, and look, this isn't...
Just
this
underpowered.
Yeah, it especially from my point of view. My point of view is I wanted to go faster, right? Did I realize later in life that car had its purpose? Yeah, but it just wasn't for me at the time, especially. But the GR86, I think, is so much more fun that I pimped that car out like crazy. I'm like, you want something like a Miata? That's my recommendation.
Yeah. How about this one that kind of falls off people's radars? 6th Gen ZR1. I feel like that kind of gets overlooked a little bit.
Is that forgive me, is that like the one that first came out, quote unquote, in our generation?
ZL1, right? That's the supercharged.
Yeah. Is that the
6th Gen ZL1?
Is that for like 2015-ish or
LT4 blower? They made them up until the end. 6th Gen Z20.
That was one of my first car reviews in Florida. Back in the day. No, I
feel like the 6th Gen kind of gets overlooked a lot just because the 5th Gen was kind of like a...
I'm thinking of the 5th Gen.
Yeah.
Sorry. Yeah.
The 6th Gen gets overlooked a lot.
For what taillights is that? Is that the clear ones or the?
Well,
is that the Prelude?
The 5th Gen had Prelude? The 2 where they had the
Transformers one.
4 bulbs.
That's how I compare.
And then they switched it over to the single bar.
I've never driven one of those.
But then the 6th Gen stuff is really nice.
I think
the newest current stuff.
I like the 6th Gen a lot.
The 5th Gen was when they just came back out with
the Z28 one, right?
Well, that was
the same one.
LS7, the NA.
No, I'm saying same body though. Is that the same? Yeah. Got it. Oh yeah. No, I never think about that car. You're right.
Well, yeah. So I don't know if we're on the same page. So 6th Gen is the one that they just discontinued.
Yeah, I like that one.
Those are good cars.
I think they're really good.
I think people don't pay enough attention to them.
No.
Because they're not quite as good as what Ford was doing.
No, I don't think so either.
But nobody gives them enough credit as like a good car because I think the 5th Gen kind of ruined a lot of people's perception of Camaro. The taste of the
mouth, yeah.
Because the 4th Gen, they stopped for so long, and then they come out with this big unit of a machine.
With no visibility.
The longest doors you'd ever been in that are also a foot thick.
You're so right. Do you remember Justin's, was it Stang Killers?
Yeah.
That thing... I remember when I saw that, like back in the day at TX2K, like I wasn't there on video. I want to make it very clear.
The white one. Yep.
Yeah. The thing was sweet, but I just remember whoever was riding with them, you see those cheap gauges, those things were bad. Like I remember the interior did not impress me on that car. It was pretty rough. But then I drove, whatever the latest ZL1 was, and I thought it was awesome. The car's awesome.
Yeah, they are good. They're good cars, and I don't know. They don't get paid enough attention to. I feel like everybody goes to like a Hellcat.
Yeah,
some kind.
Yeah.
They're like, I want a supercharger. You go right to a Hellcat.
I would probably own the ZL1 over the Hellcat.
For sure.
Yeah.
I mean, you're also in Atlanta, which...
We got some twisties,
You got quite a few Hellcats in that area.
But no.
That's kind of like the Hellcat
Takeover
capital.
Streetcar? Is that the name of the event?
Yeah.
No.
You guys have like the Hellcat
I said it backwards on purpose. Okay, I know.
Another thing I was thinking about, we need more legal street car activities. Like drifting, you more need like a drift car.
Yeah.
But it's hard to go do something with just your car that's not just a car meet or doing something illegal. Where do we bridge the gap on street car fun?
Do you mean like literally on the street?
No, just legal, ideally.
There was an event at MIR, I think, years ago. It was called Street Racing Made Safe. I loved that idea because not everybody likes going dig racing, right? And I know a lot of people are like, oh, that's roll racing is the whoosh.
Yeah.
But to me, I get it. it's one of those things where roll racing on the street is really fun, right? And you just don't want to risk your drivetrain sometimes. I get it. And I think the concept was, forgive me if I'm wrong, I just remember somebody telling me about it years ago, is that, yeah, you just roll at a 40 and basically street race all night long. And I think that's pretty cool. And also like ice cream cruise. Like that is such a great event because it's just legal enough to make it feel like you're doing something like that. But the roll racing goes on all day. It's just so much fun.
Kyle does a really good job with that event.
I love ice cream cruise. It's such a good time.
He knocked it out of the park with the concept of ice cream cruise because that track also isn't good enough for like high power cars. It's very no prep.
Yeah.
So if you're not roll racing, you're just kind of no prep racing. So you might as well just go roll race.
Yeah. Have you done a Grid Life event?
No.
Grid Lifes are great. They're really good.
They don't really have much for me.
Right.
Somebody that drag races.
Right. I could see that. But if you're looking for just like a good time, they're awesome.
I think we need more car events that cater to people to get their car out, like an ice cream cruise.
Yeah.
Not something that's a car meet or a cars and coffee. As cool as those are,
they can get fatigued pretty quick. You know, that
pretty boring quickly.
That's another thing about car culture that's changed too. It's like that was like the go-to. Like that's all you had to do was go meet up at the parking lot at night and just stand around.
Yeah.
And now people just are like, all right, so what are we doing? I'm like, I'm okay. I remember that was the mentality. I was like, I'm just chilling. I'm learning. Because that was like my learning phase. I would ask people questions like, oh, tell me about this car.
See, I used to get to the meet on like Gandy at like midnight, which is a bridge in Tampa. And I'm like, okay, who are we racing?
I might have gone to that.
It's just a bridge where everybody races over.
Oh.
At least they used to.
Is that the one over the water?
Yeah.
That's where Freddie got arrested.
That would make sense.
Yeah, in the 4GT Bay back in the day.
That would make
I remember
sense.
I drove across that bridge one time. I was like, yo, I see why people.
Well, there's like a
stuff.
few in Tampa, and the bridges are good because you can't really patrol them.
Right, yeah, yeah.
So you kind of have this like runway, but people have went off the bridge.
I can imagine. Well, here's a loop in Virginia Beach, underwater tunnels. Yeah, so since Norfolk Naval Base is there,
that's
you
probably
can't
loud.
build a bridge. You have to build tunnels under the water, so the aircraft carriers go over it.
Yep.
And so those were really crazy because you would just like pay a toll and then go in there. It was always a good time.
So I know we were talking about history, and I'm also a history guy.
Sick.
I'm curious how car culture has been affected by like history and eras. Like I always think about years when people tell me like, oh, I was doing this. I'm like, what year was it? Because my brain immediately is like, what was going on in that year?
It's a reference point.
Yeah. And when you look back on like the gas crisis and stuff like that, how it's affected cars so much going forward, and how it ruined cars that are like from the 70s, and engines and engineering has been pushed so much by history. It's an interesting topic to go into.
I'm a part of all these ridiculous Facebook pages like unpopular car opinions and I'm tired of respecting all builds, like big Ultima Energy, my personal favorite. Yep. But somebody said the other day that right now is the worst time for car culture. I'm like, you're smoking crack. I was like, oil crisis is the easiest one to point at because you had engineers who just wasted their talent, right? They just couldn't do what they wanted to do. And God, could you imagine how jarring that would have been to have these badass like 69 Camaros and then in like a Trans Am that's just a turd, like a 90 horsepower
Well,
turd.
there was a boom into muscle cars, and then they had to cut it.
Yeah,
you had to like stop the boom and then get back to it. So that's where like you just ruined all these people that were onto something, and they had to kind of reinvent a lot of their things. But maybe that also helped in some ways because
they had to get creative.
They had to get more creative. Aluminum engines, smaller displacement. You had to get smart with that stuff. Turbo technology started to
That's when the Japanese really started coming in too, because they're like, oh, we can do this, no problem, you know. And if you look at car sales of imported cars, especially during the gas crisis, you can start seeing the Japanese start trickling in because they made cars that were fun, you know, and it made sense. And I can't afford this muscle car anymore, but you know, the Skyline looks pretty cool. What's that?
That muscle car sucks anyways because it makes 80 horsepower.
And that's so funny. Like these giant displacement V8s were making like no power. It's so ass backwards. But have you ever heard about a car called the Dale?
No, what was it?
Okay. Okay. So,
I'm interested.
oil crisis.
Yep.
This is where we are.
Hot and heavy.
A person comes along. It's this lady comes along at the LA Auto Show, unveils this car called the Dale. It's 3-wheeled and has like a small little engine in it, and she claims it can go 80 miles an hour and get like really good gas mileage. I can't remember the number, but it was a big number. So everybody was like, "I want one. I'll pre-order it right now." Well, this person ended up just taking all this pre-order money and running.
Nice.
So they scammed everyone. The lady ended up being a dude, like legitimately. No gray areas here. Yeah, I know. And
Pretty common these days.
I know, but this is in the 70s, and he was found in Texas. A neighbor saw like in the newspaper or whatever about the story, and yeah, there was only one that existed. And yeah, it was like a little lawnmower engine or something in it.
Yeah.
And so they just got away with it for a while. And that car is actually in the Patterson Auto Museum. So you can go see it. But there's a really good documentary about it on, I think, Netflix or something. But
On the Dale.
yeah, the Dale. Like, and their marketing was so genius. Like when you actually look at what they did, they had printed brochures. They were taking pre-orders. They're going on talk shows. It was a prize on The Price is Right. Like legitimately.
Really? So he did that good with it, and just
like
that was before people could talk to each other so quickly.
Yeah. So it was a literal Bob Barker.
Yeah.
It's like, you can win the Dale on sale next year, and they're like, oh my god. It's like, oh, joke's on you, dude.
Gets
it was made out of
really
like,
quick.
I think, forgive me, historians, but I think it was made out of, it wasn't good material. It's like fiberglass and wood or something like that. It looked the part.
Yeah, it was easy to convince people.
Very much so, but it was
They
piece
couldn't
of
just talk to each other real quick. So I need to put on my hat for this one.
Oh boy.
Water-powered cars. Have you heard the stories
Yeah.
of people like somebody came out with one and then he mysteriously disappeared?
But why though? Like that, I've heard this for decades.
Oil industry.
Yeah, I could see that too. Okay? So this one,
You can take the
it's
other one
kind
if you
of
need.
where is it?
Here, I got you, just in case.
So the other one is my personal favorite. It's kind of like, okay, you know, with all like the UAPs and UFO stuff going on.
Oh, they're guaranteed now.
Yeah, you know what I mean.
Yeah, the Pentagon said we have
and
100% proof.
No one cared.
No one cares.
Are you serious?
No one cares.
Anyway,
They said they're here.
So anyway, what if it's the same thing with those in that, let's say it's Skunk Works black market, or not black budget of those UAVs or whatever they are, and they have the technology to do all this stuff without any propulsion, but they can't release it because it would ruin everything. It would ruin Delta Airlines. It would ruin everything. Transportation as we know it would not exist. And so what do you do about the entire global economy that's relying on oil?
Yes, all the industries would fail instantly.
That's what's up.
Instantly would fail. And I can see why they would keep water propulsion a secret.
Because it makes so much sense.
And think about how, imagine it was like, hey, salt water and it's clean burning.
Wow. Oh my God. What do we have the most resource of? I don't know. Gee.
But there's a lot of stories about people getting to it and then mysteriously like heart attack or something.
Didn't the notorious Bob Lazar do that? I think he did that. Look, allegedly, UFO guy who worked at what was his building? He said it was area S4, whatever it was. His alleged story is that he back engineered
water propulsion
because he built a rocket car first.
Yep.
He put a jet engine in a car by himself at his house. And then the government was like, wow, Bob, that's some really cool stuff, man. I mean, come help us out. And then he was like, oh, I built a car by water too. They're like, oh, wow, that's really cool. Let's not release it ever.
Yeah, you better not talk to anybody. Well, and then you start like
This is amazing.
reading. Then you start reading about a guy named Nikola Tesla, And then you're like,
Dude,
he turned crazy
I
at the end
know.
of his life. I don't know what happened.
His sleep schedule. You know, I've actually tried to do the Tesla sleep schedule.
Where he's like 3 hours.
It's 4-hour increments. You never do like the long.
Yeah, you don't actually get REM sleep in.
It was rough.
Yeah.
It was rough. I mean, I understood it, but I did it for like 4 or 5 days. I wasn't like, I did this for a month. I did it for like a week. And I was like, no.
There's so many crazy stories around him where they're like, he had all these papers that were just taken at the time of his death.
He had
Hidden.
proof of basically like Wi-Fi before Wi-Fi, electricity without any cable.
Sonar,
like
cell phone technology was all because of him.
by himself.
Yeah.
But it's so funny how people realize that Tesla's named after a guy. They don't realize that it's not Elon, right?
Yeah,
They're
and
like,
he made the motor in like 1850 and they haven't even touched it. The only, like, even the dams, like what's the Niagara Falls, there's a dam up there.
Yeah.
That is still his technology and they've been unable to improve on it. They don't let anybody touch it because nobody can do it better than he did it in like 1890.
Imagine going through like Da Vinci's book and just being like, none of this is relevant.
Yeah.
It's like the same thing, except
All of his is
Yeah.
still, we still need it.
Nikola, come back. You looked like an alien. Come back.
Yep. Well, that was I think we should end it off there
That's
with
fine.
the
Well, that was a
conspiracy
fun
hats. Dude, that was awesome.
Dude, I had a great time.
Yes, please come back to Florida and visit, and we could do some more hood rat shit.
I'm always down. Next time I'll just fly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I have to show up in my car at least once.
Yeah, you're welcome on the podcast anytime. Anytime you got something
Watch
cool to go on.
every like month and you'll be like, hey, I'm coming back. I got another conspiracy
Hey,
for you.
come on back down. We can definitely just sit here and riff about cars because that was fun.
He has a turtle. You probably already know.
Two of them. You didn't even see the
Bowels-
second one.
Oh, you have a second one?
Yeah, he's a little smaller though, but.
Oh,
Yeah,
gosh.
so we'll end it off there. David, thanks for coming down.
Dude,
I always end it
thanks
off.
so much,
Where can they
man.
find you at?
That Dude in Blue on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, you know, where everybody likes to
Facebook,
argue,
all the good
Facebook,
stuff.
all that stuff. Yeah, it's all That Dude in Blue. It's easy.
Yeah, go check them out, guys. A lot of videos on there.
There's a lot
of videos on there.
Yeah, name a car. I've maybe done it.
All right. Thank you guys for watching. Keep it saucy.
out.
We'll see you next time.
That was fun.
Yeah, dude, that was awesome.